Seeing at 6 p.m., I'd like to call the June 15th, 2022 regular meeting of the Kenai City Council to order, and I'd like to welcome everybody here this evening. And if you are able, please rise and join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. Pledge of allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Clerk, please call the roll.
Councilmember Winger.
Present.
Councilmember Nackstead.
Here.
Mayor Gabriel.
Here.
Vice Mayor Glendenning.
Here.
Councilmember Baisden.
Here.
Councilmember Sonart.
Here.
And Councilmember Petty.
Here.
You have a quorum.
Thank you, Council. Before we get to agenda approval, I'd like to call your attention to a laydown you should have in front of you with requested additions to the packet. Action, add to item B1, scheduled public comments, rights of grand juries, additional information provided by presenter, Representative Ben Carpenter. Action, add to item D7, resolution number 2022-51, Airport Commission Lawton Acres memo/minutes by the city manager. In addition, the summary of technical amendments memo requested by the city manager. Action, add to item G2, action approval FY 2022 purchase orders over $15,000, requested amendment memo by the city manager. And action, add to item G13, new business ordinance 3295-2022 introduction, requested by the city clerk. Pleasure, Council. Councilor Nackstead.
Thank you, Mayor Gabriel. I move for approval of the agenda with the additional action items B1, D7, G2, and G13. I also request that agenda item G2, fiscal year 2022 purchase orders over $15,000 be removed from the consent agenda and move to suspend the rules to hear agenda item G2, fiscal year 2022 purchase orders over $15,000 prior to agenda item D, public hearings.
Second.
Request unanimous consent.
Any discussion, objection from the body? Unanimous consent was requested. Any objection? Seeing none, the agenda is approved. Okay. Next, we have the consent agenda. Councilor Nackstead.
Thank you, Mayor Gabriel. I move for approval.
Oh, do we need to vote on that motion for suspension of the rules?
No, it was approved
That was
unanimously.
that was okay. I didn't want to make sure we didn't have to vote. Okay, very good. Councilor
Thank you for
Nackstead.
that. I move for approval of the consent agenda and request unanimous consent.
Second.
Is there anybody from the body that would like to amend the consent agenda at this time? Seeing none, Madam Clerk, would you please read the consent agenda into the record?
Approval of the regular meeting minutes of May 18th, 2022, and the regular meeting minutes of June 1st, 2022, both brought to you by the city clerk. New business, action approval, bills to be ratified, brought to you by the administration. New business, action approval, FY 2023 purchase orders over $15,000, brought to you by the administration. Action approval, Los Compadre liquor license renewal, brought to you by the city clerk. Action approval, special use permit to Empire Airlines, Inc. for aircraft loading and parking, brought to you by the administration. Action approval of a special use permit to Everett's Air Fuel, Inc. for aircraft loading and parking, brought to you by the administration. Action approval of special use permit to Crowley Fuels, LLC for aviation fueling and apron fueling area. Action approval for a special use permit to Alaska Geographic for vending kiosks in the airport terminal. Action approval for a special use permit to United Parcel Service Company for aircraft loading and parking, brought to you by the administration. Action approval of a special use permit for Kenai Aviation for aircraft parking, brought to you by the administration. Action approval for a special use permit to Alaska Air Fuel, Inc. for aircraft loading and parking. Action approval for a fifth amendment to the agreement for restaurant concessions with Situla, LLC, DBA Brothers Cafe, brought to you by the administration. Ordinance for introduction, ordinance number 3295-2022, amending the official zoning map by rezoning certain parcels southeast of Beaver Loop Road along Basin View Way, Kim N. Ang Court, Cub Court, Ames Road, and Dolchek Lane from rural residential to rural residential 1, brought to you by the administration, public hearing on July 6th, 2022, and that is your consent agenda.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. Is there anybody from the general public that would like to speak to any item that is on the consent agenda, which was just read into the record? That would include item G13. Okay. Seeing none, unanimous consent requested? Unanimous consent was requested. Is there any objection? Seeing none, the consent agenda is approved. And I will ask the city clerk, our consent agenda, you might have noticed, looks a little bit different for this meeting. I'll have the city clerk speak to that during her report. So that brings us to scheduled public comment. This evening we have our representative Ben Carpenter, who is going to give us an update on working with State Attorney General on the rights of grand juries. Representative Carpenter. Yep.
Mr. Mayor, Mr. City Manager, council members, it's good to be sitting before you. I think this is the first time that I've had the privilege of coming visiting with you. I received your resolution 2022-45 that passed out of this body on June 1st. And it was in regards to grand jury investigations that have, some members of our public are kind of concerned about where we're going with that. I am too, and I have been tracking this issue, attempting to make some headway in the legislature for a couple of years now. I thought that it would be a good idea for me to come and share what information I have with you, since you requested in your resolution that legislation be passed to basically enable investigatory grand juries that currently are probably not happening. And this is a really important matter, and I felt like I should probably come and inform you what work I've been doing and where we're at, not necessarily as a representative of the state, but just as the work that I'm doing as a representative for my district. I also intend to go visit with the Borough Assembly and let them know, so that the residents of the Kenai Peninsula know what's happening in regards to investigatory grand juries. The information that I presented in the packet to you all is nothing new. It is a copy of the constitutional authority for grand juries, the statutory authority for grand juries, and the lesser known criminal rules that the courts come up with for how grand juries are conducted. And that's Criminal Rule 6, and then reports Criminal Rule 6.1. I went ahead and highlighted what I think are the important or germane parts of those documents, and would just like to kind of run through a logical sequence here of where we're at. So the Constitution, Article 1, Section 8, spells out the responsibilities of the state to maintain a grand jury system. And the highlighted portion I would just like to point out is that it says, and I quote, "The grand jury shall consist of at least 12 citizens, a majority of whom concurring may return an indictment." And that's a criminal indictment. That's a very serious thing, okay? The power of grand juries to investigate and make recommendations. So 1, to investigate, 2, to make recommendations concerning the public welfare or safety shall never be suspended. And it has come to my attention through signed affidavits, personal conversations, and the fact that the Department of Law is kind of struggling to figure out how to enable investigatory grand juries. We are, in effect, suspending the ability for grand juries to operate or to investigate, okay? So I want to pause there and say, I believe that this is probably something that has occurred over the past, not in a nefarious way necessarily, although if evidence is uncovered that there is a nefarious intent, then I haven't seen that yet. But I think what has happened is we've just become accustomed to operating under one part of the statute and not under the other, and I'll highlight that here in just a second. If you want to turn to the statute, the documents with the statute, this would be found under Chapter 40, Grand Jury, the Alaska Statute, Chapter 40. And I'll begin with just reading some of the highlighted portions. Section 1240.30 spells out the duty of inquiry into crimes and general powers The last sentence there says the grand jury shall have the power to investigate and make recommendations concerning the public welfare or safety. The following statute, 124040, 12.40.040, says that if an individual grand juror knows or has reason to believe that a crime has been committed that is triable by the court, the juror shall disclose it to the other jurors who shall investigate. It is very clear to me that the statute supports and gives authority to whomever follows up with impaneling grand juries, that a grand jury has the ability and the authority, the requirement, to investigate on matters that would be concerning us, the citizens of the state of Alaska. It's my contention here that we probably don't need legislative action, meaning a bill passed and law changed, in order to solve the problem that we have. However, if the bureaucracy doesn't want to operate in a way that enables grand juries to be able to investigate as the statute and the Constitution direct, then we may need to have some legislation that forces the issue. I have been in touch with the the Attorney General. We've had several conversations. I suspect that we have not been doing investigatory grand juries for many, many years, if not decades. I'm very concerned. The legislature this last session spent quite a bit of time on sexual assaults, and you know that it's been in the news. The governor's been focused on solving our sexual assault problem within the state. And I know that there are parts of the state in the past who have had sexual assault claims that went unprosecuted within the state. That is to say that a prosecutor determined that there wasn't enough evidence or there wasn't a need to prosecute those sexual assaults. There's nothing in the statute and nothing in the Constitution, and again, when you look through the court laws, there's nothing in the court rules that say that the prosecutor gets to be a gatekeeper for what the grand jury gets to investigate. If you turn to the court rules, and I will jump ahead here to page 17 of the criminal rules. Rule 6, subsection E, directs that the following oath shall be administered to all of the grand jury members. And that oath, in part, says, you will solemnly swear that you will diligently inquire and true presentment make of all such matters as shall be given to you for consideration, and I'll pause there for a second, given to you by consideration, in my estimation, is by a prosecutor. Meaning, under statutory authority 124070, which is on page 1 of the Alaska statute handout, Section 1 says, the prosecuting attorney shall submit an indictment to the grand jury and cause the evidence in support of that indictment to be brought before the grand jury. The oath that every grand juror takes is to diligently inquire into matters as shall be given to you for consideration, and I would say by the prosecuting attorney. Okay? Then it says, or shall otherwise come to your knowledge in connection with your present service. Alaska Court Rule 6 says that a Superior Court judge shall impanel a grand jury at least once a year, not upon the request of a prosecuting attorney. That judge in every district shall impanel a grand jury so that the public has access to their constitutional right at least once a year to conduct an investigation. There's clear statutory authority here, and there's clear documentation or procedure written in court rules to say that jurors should be taking their oath seriously and investigating matters that come to their knowledge. If they knew about it prior to being selected as a jury member, then they have a responsibility to bring that information to the jury and investigate. That's why 12 people are pulled out of the public and impaneled into a grand jury at least once a year. It's important that for whatever reason, we the people are able to come together under the authority of law to investigate those matters that may not be being investigated within the state for some other reason. We still have to follow all of the court rules and evidentiary rules and all of that is spelled out in other rules, court rules, for investigations and presenting information to a judge, making a ruling, making a presentment to the courts. But the fact that a prosecutor can choose what to investigate or what not to investigate or prosecute, and then tell a grand jury that they can't investigate something is something that we cannot tolerate. I don't think anything in the statute needs to change in order to choose to do that. I think that the policies within the Department of Law for the prosecutors needs to change. And that is what the Attorney General has said that he is reviewing right now. I think it is as simple as the Attorney General changing the policies within the Department of Law for all of our state prosecutors, that they will no longer act as supervisors, in an effect, gatekeepers within our grand jury system. The statute further says, and this is on page 2, under the authority that I think we've been used to, our business as usual, 124070, Section 3, speaking of the prosecuting attorney, shall, when required by the grand jury, prepare indictments or presentments, attend their sittings to advise them in relation to their duties, or to examine witnesses in their presence. It's a subordinate role. It's a support role to what the grand jury's authority is to investigate. When a grand jury is impaneled via Rule 6, a foreman is selected, and that foreman is granted authority to place people under oath. So in effect, like any other elected official that can place people under oath. That's a significant power enabled to one juror, because during the investigation, you now can place people under oath and require them to tell the truth. Of course, they don't have to speak if it's self-incriminating, because they've got a constitutional right to not do that. But if they're conducting an investigation, they don't need, the foreman and the jurors don't need the judge to empower them at all for that investigation. The foreman can place somebody under oath and continue their investigation. Likewise, they don't need the prosecuting attorney. They don't need to run it by the prosecuting attorney. And right now, the prosecuting attorney is the gatekeeper for the investigations. That's in effect what's happening. So if we can get the Attorney General to just place a new policy out there for all of the district attorneys, and the district attorneys follow that policy, we should have a turnaround in investigatory grand juries. Now, I will say that Court Rule 6 doesn't spell out how the jury would conduct a investigatory grand jury vice a investigation that maybe the prosecutor brought forward, right? So if a grand jury member says, hey, I have a thing that I want to investigate or bring to your attention, and it's during the process of what the prosecutor brought forward, it's interrupting the flow of business, there's nothing that says when it is the appropriate time to bring forward. There might be a rule change that needs to happen in order to spell that out. The Attorney General has told me that he's going to engage with the court's General Counsel and bring in the Chief Justice to find the way forward here for making sure that our grand juries can conduct their investigations. If that process doesn't work, then I think the legislature is going to have to hold hearings and do some sort of legislative fix. I'm hopeful that we've got the right people in place at in the executive branch and the judicial branch that they will fix this problem. But barring that, since I'm running unopposed this year, I will be there next January to take up this issue, and if it requires legislative fix, then I will champion that. So I will kind of pause there, or that's pretty much all I wanted to say to you, and if you have questions, I'm open to dialogue.
Any question, any questions of Representative Carpenter? Councilor next.
Didn't think I'd get there first. Sorry. Representative Carpenter, what's the pushback from the Attorney General? I'm sure you talked to the Attorney General and said all it requires is this little rule change here, and so why are they not complying here?
So I think the best way to answer that is to say that your 124070 authority that spells out that a prosecuting attorney presents an indictment to a grand jury as the normal course of how things work in our justice system right now is how we're just used to operating that way. The pushback is, well, now we have to operate in a different way, and we don't have any rules as to how we're going to make that happen. Do we just, whenever somebody comes up, a member of the public or a grand jury member says, hey, I have something to investigate, does the whole thing just pause until we do that? Or is there some procedure that we're going to follow to enable that to happen? The Department of Law doesn't understand because they're not currently doing it. I think we've gotten, and I don't know why, I think we've gotten focused on the 124070 authority and have kind of ignored the 124040 authority that says that the grand jury gets to decide what's before the grand jury in the form of an investigation. So the pushback is just in the normal flow of business hasn't been with the 124070 authority, and we're not sure how to get there. That's why the Attorney General has reached out to his own staff, but also to the court's general counsel and to the Chief Justice of the Supreme Court to figure out what the right fix is moving forward.
Councilmember Sonner.
Thank you, Representative Carpenter, for coming and speaking tonight and sharing with us the progress of what's happening and where this is going. I, too, like Councilmember Nackstead, was wondering about pushback from the Attorney General, so that just answered that. And I'm also just wondering, kind of out loud here, has there been any thought or discussion as to how to educate the 12 new jurors when they come on board? Because most people wouldn't know that they had the 1270-40. I mean, they would just expect to hear from the prosecutor. I mean, is there any thought or any ideas on that?
So there is some discrepancy. If you take a previous version of the grand jury handbook and you take the current version of the grand jury handbook, they are not identical. So previous grand jury handbooks maybe spelled out some authority that the current grand jury handbook doesn't spell out as well. So we probably need a change to the grand jury handbook that is the education piece. And that also is hopefully something that the court system identifies with the conversation with the Attorney General to say, hey, maybe we should address the handbook as well as our own court rules to enable this to happen. Now, I don't want to, maybe I'll just put on my conspiracy hat for just a second and say, if we have been operating, if there are reasons why prosecutors and judges would not want to have an investigatory grand jury investigating anything that comes before the grand jury, you might expect that there would be some pushback on enabling this to happen. The constitutional authority of grand juries to investigate is not something that's focused on private sector business or criminal activity that law enforcement can investigate, although they could investigate that. It is for public welfare. It is for public corruption. It is the highest investigatory authority within our state constitution for dealing with such issues. So it is a touchy subject in some circles if you've got things that and people that don't want investigations to happen within the government, this is a very dangerous road to go down. I don't know if that's any of the pushback that we're receiving or have received or may receive in the future. I'm just saying, it's just my conspiracy hat. I'm just saying, you know, if there are things out there that don't want to, that the light shouldn't, people don't want the light shown on, then that might be why. But as it sits right now, the pushback that I have as to why it hasn't happened yet is purely bureaucratic. We just don't yet know what process needs to be in place, and we're going to do some investigation. Now, the previous Attorney General that I spoke to had one of his staff members shut me down. We're not talking about it. We're not going to move forward with it. I have what I believe is a supportive Attorney General in the position right now that is helping to resolve the issue.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Councilmember Petty?
Yes, thank you, Representative Carpenter. What would be the best contact information to reach out to you, please?
Sure. So I'll leave my card here for you all. My email address is reprep.ben.carpenter@akleg.gov, akleg.gov. And from anywhere within the state, you can reach my office at 800-469-3779. That's the easiest way because there's two different numbers when I'm in session and when I'm not, when I'm here for the office local. So that number goes to wherever we're at. You're welcome.
Excuse me, any further questions of Representative Carpenter? I do have, I was going to ask, because you had talked about, if I remember, and my wife, I've never served on grand jury, I've done pettit, but my wife's done grand jury. I think she was like a 6-month stand every Friday, I think is how it was set up. But you talked about once a year impaneling a grand jury specifically just for, and they don't have to meet every Friday, right? It just depends on what's on the docket. So if that's in statute, that would be allowed right now, where you wouldn't have a prosecuting attorney. I mean, they could impanel themselves, presumably, right, to investigate. And I guess and then a follow-up or secondary part to that question is there anything that speaks to the resources that they're afforded to do the investigations?
Thank you. So to the last part of the question first, no, I haven't seen anything that talks about resources. As far as the grand jury is concerned, their investigation is there isn't a consideration of cost. Now, I don't know whether the prosecutor or the judge speaks to them about that process or what the cost is of what they're asking. That might be part of the conversation. But as what I've seen, there's nothing that would educate the grand jury members on the cost of what their investigation. We have grand juries impaneled, I would assume, multiple times throughout the year. Mm-hmm. My previous comments were specifically to point out that it isn't the prosecutor that calls a grand jury. It is the sitting Superior Court judge or presiding Superior Court judge. And the court rules state that at least once a year a grand jury gets called, but that isn't to preclude it from being called multiple times. Mm. Court Rule 6 also spells out how long a grand jury members can be asked to do what they need to do without an extension or some extenuating circumstances for extending their service. And I want to say that's 4 months. I could probably find it,
okay,
but
yeah.
there is a timeline.
Okay.
That's spelled out in the court rules.
Mm-hmm.
And I guess it would also be pertinent to know here too, is that the outcome of a grand jury investigation is normally thought of as an indictment. And that is what the prosecutor is asking the grand jury to decide. Do we want to the prosecutor wants to proceed with an indictment, and the grand jury agrees, and therefore an indictment goes forward. Or the grand jury says, no, we're not going to indict, and there is no indictment. But that's not the only thing that can come out of a grand jury. Court Rule 6.1 points to the authority of a grand jury to provide or produce a report that isn't an indictment, but the report could have allegations of wrongdoing in the report. So there are other outcomes other than a yes or no on an indictment presented by a prosecutor that the grand jury is by statute and by court rule allowed to do, but currently not being allowed to do. So anyway.
Thank you. Any other questions? Vice Mayor Glendenning.
Yeah, just always the process question with me, okay, and maybe some budget. I support the idea that there be grand juries that can investigate the people's business, and I believe it has its roots in Old English common law. Is there any budget going to be provided for these folks to go ahead with an investigation over and above what law enforcement and judicial is allocated?
So my assumption right now, because I haven't investigated the cost of anything, my assumption is that all of the cost of the grand jury is borne by the court's budget. So if we see an increase in investigatory grand juries, then you would see an increase in costs associated with that. Yeah, I would expect that.
That'd be money well spent for the people. Thank
Agreed.
you.
Thank you. Any further questions or comments? Thank you. That was very informative. I appreciate you taking the time to
You're welcome.
be with us.
Thank you.
Good luck. Next up, we have unscheduled public comments. Is there anybody from the general public that would like to address the council at this time on any item that is not on the agenda or consent agenda? Please come forward, give your name and address for the record, please.
First of all, thank you, Patty C., 314 Rogers Road. I feel like I bring something up every year, but you guys do a good job of solving my problems. When we lived in Turkey, we lived there for 5 years, and we got a certified letter from the fire department in Kenai asking if they could, for practice for their firemen, burn down our abandoned structure. And we quickly wrote back and said, Jason, that's the only home we own. We've bought it. We plan on moving into it. And it really wasn't in that bad a shape, but I thought it was kind of cool that they could, practice and clear everything away. And where I'm going with this is Linwood has, and it's not the only place in Kenai, abandoned structures that really, to me, are fire danger and personal dangers for those around. There's one that I have never, it's starting to lean, and there's trees. I don't know if they're growing out of it, but it's kind of getting buried in them. And there's another one block down on the opposite side that's large, and all the windows are broken out, and I've never seen, I don't think they have been inhabited in a long time. Are there funds? Do they still burn down structures and clear them away for safety purposes? Do you know?
What I would suggest is that you contact administration. Mr. Oster, I see he's jotting down some notes
Okay.
here I know that was a practice in the past, and I'm not sure, Councilmember Bazin, he with a fire
Thank you.
department background, could probably speak to that.
Thank you, Mayor. So in the past, when I worked here with the Kenai Fire Department and was a fire chief out in Nikiski, it's very difficult for us to acquire and burn down any buildings any longer because of the permitting process and environmental issues that take place. Tearing down a facility is a lot easier for us to be able to get, and we now have training facilities set up to burn in to do it environmentally friendly. And it's just very difficult because all the material and stuff that's associated with it. That's what I recognize.
Okay, so what do we do about problems like this?
Well, so what I would recommend is that you contact administration with the addresses of the properties that you'd like to ask them about. It's our city planners in the back of the room, and so we have code. There's code and ordinances that have to be followed, and there could be some code violations or would be enforcement orders for those people the property owners to address issues. That's generally the sort of roadmap that it would entail.
Because it just feels like it's just spreading down that street. In fact, one has painted a big sign and put in the front yard, "This is not a garage sale." I mean, it's It's pretty impressive. It's pretty impressive.
Wow.
And one other little question, is there a plan for landscaping the airport?
Yes.
Is that, I mean, there's nothing but grass. Is there gonna
Yes,
be
there
landscaping there?
is, yes.
Okay,
Yeah.
Okay.
And that would be something else you can follow up on as part of the same conversation with Mr. Ostrander and
okay.
Mr. Foster. Yes, they could fill you in on the details of that too. But
Okay.
yes, there is funding
right.
for that.
Because I just think we need to look better than we do. I mean, I don't think we have to have manicured yards and everything looking beautiful, but there's a little bit of respect for your neighbors and
Sure.
health. Thank you.
Any questions for Ms. C? Councilmember Sonart?
Thank you for speaking tonight. I actually live on Linwood Lane. I'm down on the far end.
Okay.
So I know exactly of what you speak. Just a little funny story on the yard sign that says this is not a garage sale.
It's better now.
It is better. Our dog likes to play with buoys. Buoys are very expensive. And my husband was driving by, and he saw the owner in the yard with all this stuff, and my husband just assumed it was a garage sale. And he saw a buoy there. So he stops and asks the man, could he buy the buoy? And, of course, the man was a little bit upset that my husband thought it was a garage sale. So the next day we drive by, and there's the sign.
Okay.
So, I think that was my husband's fault.
But
Can we
that's
strike that
good.
from the
That's
record?
good.
So,
Good.
sorry. But,
You can see the garbage building up in front of some of those houses.
yes, and I know there's several residences throughout Linwood Lane that over the years it's like they're a ghost town. So I know exactly what you're talking about.
Okay.
Thank you.
Councilmember Winger?
Thank you, Mayor Gabriel. I just wanted to say thank you for coming in and raising awareness. I think that is a problem that we're seeing all over our city in different areas. I know in my neighborhood and the neighborhood the city manager resides in on Birch, we have a few homes that kind of fall in that too. So it is definitely a problem we see, and hopefully we can rectify this
Because it
for
is a
everybody.
fire danger, if nothing.
It is. Thank you.
Thank
Any
you.
other questions of? I actually had that happen to me. I had, when our kids were younger, we had toys all over the yard, and I was in the driveway talking to my buddies, and this gal comes out and starts looking at all my stuff and asked what she's doing. She said, "Oh my God, this isn't a garage sale?" And I was like, and I said, "No, but what will you give me for it? I mean, make an offer. I mean, I'm open to." So
Okay.
it was guys, you know how that goes sometimes. But
Thanks,
yeah,
Doug.
that's something
Thanks
I
so
know
much.
issues there. So thank you. Is there anybody else from the general public that'd like to speak to the council at this time on any item that is not on the consent agenda or agenda? Seeing none, we'll move to public hearings, and we did move our purchase order action approval, which was G2, to ahead of the public hearing. So now we have before us action approval FY 2022 purchase orders over $15,000. Can we have a motion to? Councilmember Naxton.
I move to approve the purchase orders over $15,000.
Second.
Any discussion? Councilmember, Mr. Ostrander, can we just an overview of what we're doing here?
Yeah, thank you, Mayor Gabriel. So there is a requested amendment to add a purchase order over $15,000 in your laydown. It's to add tower study to Larson Engineering and Design for $34,750. And the reason that's in there is there actually was a resolution 2022-46 that we had up for your consideration tonight that was going to approve the same contract but to a different firm, Tech Pro. And it was in the amount of $48,150. And this has been quite a struggle to get someone hired to do this tower study, which is badly needed. The tower is incredibly old, almost 50 years old. And we had gone through the process of actually going out to get quotes for this, and to 6 local engineering firms. None of them responded, but one of them did tell us that this Tech Pro was a firm that could do it. We reached out to them, It was significantly more than the money that we had budgeted, so we came back to council and asked for additional funds. At that point, it was over $35,000, which requires us to go out to a formal bid. So we did that. We went out to a formal bid on May 19th. It was out for a couple of weeks. Again, none of the local firms responded to the RFP, but TechPro did again as well. So we were going to come to council with a resolution tonight asking for approval for this $48,000 contract to TechPro. Well, in between the time the packet was published and now, Larson Engineering actually came forward and said, you know, hey, we'd be willing to do this, and they would be willing to do it for less than $35,000. Since it's less than $35,000, it doesn't require approval by a resolution, but can be approved just with purchase orders over $15,000. This is going to save the city $13,000, and it also gives the work to a local firm. And so we're requesting tonight that if you make this amendment, it will award this contract to Larson Engineering and Design instead of the TechPro, which was in Resolution 2022-46. We're also asking that the council fail or postpone indefinitely Resolution 2022-46 if this amendment that we're requesting gets your approval.
Any questions from the body to administration? Vice Mayor Glendenning.
Yeah, just for the people at home, the new approach or proposal from Larson that meets all our goals and objectives, and will complete what we are going to look at the condition of the tower, and then the devices that are to be hung on it for weight and balance and all of that stuff.
Mr. Ostrander.
Yeah, thank you, Mayor Gabriel, Vice Mayor Glendenning. Yeah, the scope of work that Larson is conducting is identical to what was in the RFP and actually what TechPro had proposed on as well.
Thank you.
Any other questions of administration? Councilmember Nexed, could you move?
Yeah, thank you, Mayor. I move to add a new line to the action approval, fiscal year 2022 purchase orders over $15,000 that reads, vendor, Larson Engineering and Design, description, fiscal year 22 tower study, PO number, department 124639, non-departmental, reason, tower study, amount $34,750, total PO amount $34,750. Request unanimous consent.
Second.
It was seconded, unanimous consent was requested. Is there any objection? Seeing none, the motion is approved. And so what this does now, just for everybody that listens, it essentially adds this purchase order, under purchase orders for $34,750, and then we'll take up the second part of this when we get to item D2 on our agenda. Very good. First up, next time we'll move on to, oh, yeah, sorry. So the main motion we have as amended. So any further discussion?
Request unanimous consent.
Thank you. Unanimous consent was requested on the motion as amended. Seeing none, that motion is approved. Next up, we're on item D1, public hearings. Ordinance number 3294-2022, accepting and appropriating funding from the State of Alaska Department of Natural Resources, Division of Forestry to support spruce beetle mitigation and hazard fuel reduction. Pleasure, Council. Councilmember Naxton.
Thank you, Mayor Gabriel. I move to enact ordinance 3294-2022.
I will second it.
Is there anybody from the general public that would like to speak to ordinance number 3294-2022? Anybody online? Okay, seeing nobody here online, we'll bring it back to council. Comments, discussion from council, or from council, from the body? Councilman Winger.
Thank you, Mayor Gabriel. I think this is great. I just want to say thank you to administration for looking for this funding. And I was just hoping maybe we can get a brief overview on how the slash disposal site is currently going.
Mr. Ostrander.
Thank you, Mayor Gabriel, Councilmember Winger. So actually, Mr. Walker's in the back, and I'll let him speak to this in a second. But I know that this is, last weekend was the second weekend it's open. I know I saw multiple people driving through town towards Central Peninsula Landfill to dump their slash. So I still think that the word needs to get out more than it was. We did try an extensive effort to get the word out, but I think it's going to just take a little bit of time. But as far as the number of acres that have been mitigated from slash that's been disposed and any other information, Mr. Walker, Parks and Rec Director, who is operating the facility, can provide additional information.
Mr. Walker.
Thank you, Mayor. I just did those numbers right before I came here, and so we've had 112 visits so far and a little over 16 acres treated.
Councilmember Winger.
Thank you. I appreciate that update. One question, there's no signage on the road that says slash. Are we going to put some sort of sign out there that would show people where to turn? If you're not slowing down and looking for that mile marker, it is easy to pass. And that was one feedback I had received.
Mr. Ostrander.
Thank you, Mayor Gabriel, Councilmember Ringer. Brad and I talked about that earlier this week, I think yesterday, about getting signage. So that is something that we're going to get out there.
And this was 3 years, is that correct? 3-year funding, okay. Councilmember next.
Thank you. Yeah, I too wanted to thank administration and Tony Pryor for, bringing this forward and getting the funds, and it's definitely needed. And but I did have a question for Brad regarding the 16 acres. I was wondering how we equate visits with acres, or where does the acres come from? Just a numbers guy.
Mr. Ostrander.
Thank you, Mayor Gabriel. Councilmember Naxat, I think I can take that one, actually. So a part of the grant agreement with the state required that we track the amount of acres that have been mitigated by people that are dumping at the slash disposal site. So when they come into the facility, we ask them, how many acres have you mitigated with the materials that you're going to be bringing to the site? And they'll tell us, well, I've cleared 2 acres or whatever, and we account for that. So at the end of this, we can tell the state that the slash that was disposed at this site was the result of 150 acres that have been mitigated by folks. So that's how we're tracking it. Okay.
Any further questions? So I do have one. Are you seeing more just slash, or are you seeing rounds in the mix? Mr. Walker.
Thank you, Mayor. Right now, it's I would say probably 80% slash. We probably got more rounds today than we have, and that's because we worked at the fire department.
Oh, okay, very good. Thank you. Any further discussion? See none, clerk, please call the roll.
Councilmember Naxted,
Yes.
Mayor Gabriel,
Yes.
Vice Mayor Glendenning,
Yes.
Councilmember Baisden,
Yes.
Councilmember Sonart,
Yes.
Councilmember Petty,
Yes.
Councilmember Winger.
Yes.
You have 7 yes votes. Ordinance 3294, 2022 is enacted.
Thank you. Next up, we have item D2, Resolution 2022-46, authorizing award of a sole source contract to perform a communications tower study. Pleasure of council. Councilmember Naxtat.
Thank you, Mayor Gabriel. I move to suspend indefinitely Resolution 2022-46.
I think we have to move it first.
Do we have to move it first?
Yes,
I move to approve Resolution 2022-46.
Second.
Very good. Is there anybody from the general public that would like to speak to Resolution 2022-46?
No hands raised.
Seeing and hearing none, we'll bring it back to council. Councilmember Naxtat.
Thank you, Mayor. I move to postpone indefinitely Resolution 2022-46 and request unanimous consent.
Second.
Any discussion on the motion to postpone? Seeing none, unanimous consent was requested. Is there any objection? Seeing none, resolution number 2022-46 is postponed indefinitely. Next up, we have resolution number 2022-47, authorizing the use of the Equipment Replacement Fund and authorizing award of a contract for the purchase of a replacement ambulance for the Kenai Fire Department. Pleasure, council. Councilmember Naxton.
Thank you, Mayor. I move to adopt Resolution 2022-47.
I second that.
Is there anybody from the general public that would like to speak to resolution 2022-47? Seeing and hearing none, we'll bring it back to council. Pleasure of council. Discussion?
Request unanimous consent.
Thank you. Unanimous consent was requested. Is there any objection? Seeing none, resolution number 2022-47 is adopted. Next up, resolution number 2022-48, amending the employee classification plan by changing the title of the account class of employees to a controller and increasing the range. Pleasure of council. Councilmember Nexton.
Thank you, Mayor. I move to adopt Resolution 2022-48.
I second that.
Yeah, we did 47. We did, that was the resolution. Okay. Councilmember Basin, did you second the? Oh, Councilmember Petty. Okay, very good. So we have, is there anybody from the general public that would like to speak to resolution number 2022-48? Nobody online, nobody in chambers. Bring it back to council. This is, it was something that Mr. Eubank, our finance director, had gave us an overview during the budget process. So this is housekeeping, I'm thinking, if I recall, Mr. Eubank, to changes that were made to the budget. Is that correct? Through administration?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor. This does just amend actually what was adopted in the budget, the classification plan, to change the account position to the controller position. So this is the final step. The funds were appropriated during the budget. This just actually changes the position itself. It's been reviewed and graded by HR, and it's gone through our process now. So,
Thank you. Further discussion? Councilmember Petty?
I'd like to request unanimous consent.
Thank you. Unanimous consent was requested. Is there any objection? Seeing none, resolution number 2022-48 is adopted. Next up, resolution, or item D5, resolution number 2022-49, authorizing binding of airport owners and operators liability insurance coverage for July 1st, 2022 through July 30th, 2023. Pleasure of council. Councilmember Naxton.
Thank you, Mayor. I move to adopt Resolution 2022-49.
Second that.
Is there anybody from the general public that would like to speak to resolution number 2022-49? Seeing and hearing none, we'll bring it back to council. Comments, deliberation from council?
Request unanimous consent.
Very good. Unanimous consent was requested. Is there any objection? Seeing none, resolution number 2022-49 is adopted. Next up, item D6, resolution number 2022-50, authorizing a budget transfer in the general fund, Public Works Department, Streets Division for the purchase of sanding equipment. Pleasure of council. Councilmember Naxton.
Thank you, Mayor. I move to adopt Resolution 2022-50.
I'll second that.
Is there anybody from the general public that would like to speak to resolution number 2022-50? Seeing and hearing none, we'll bring it back to council. Comments, deliberation from council?
Request unanimous consent.
Very good. Unanimous consent was requested. Is there any objection? Seeing none, resolution number 2022-50 is adopted. And we'll take a 5-minute at ease. I'd like to go back on the record here. We are on item D7, resolution number 2022-51, adopting the City of Kenai Land Management Plan. Pleasure, Council. Councilmember Axton.
Thank you, Mayor. I move to adopt Resolution 2022-51.
Second.
Is there anybody from the general public that would like to speak to resolution 2022-51? Seeing none, we'll bring it back to council. Comments, deliberation from council. Yes, Mr. Ostrander. Good
Thank-
lead in.
Thank you, Mayor Gable. I just wanted to discuss a little bit what you see in front of you here. So Ryan Foster, our planning director, has taken the document, the one that you saw last time, and he has made a significant number of technical amendments or small adjustments to the document, which are outlined in your laydown. There's a list of all the changes, the technical edits that we've made to the document. So all of those are in here, and those were compiled through public comments that came in from direct requests from council members and commissioners, and these were things that didn't rise to the level of needing an amendment. They were just easy changes and changes that made the document a better document. So those have all been changed. And then you also have a couple of supporting documents, one in your laydown, which is minutes from the Airport Commission meeting of April 14th, where the Airport Commission affirmed their recommendation that parcel 04501-003, which is otherwise known as Lot and Acres, that the status remains disposed. That's been included as well. We also have a memo in here that includes all of the amendments that were compiled over the course of all the meetings with the commissions, and they're all the amendments that came out of the council's work session. So we've included all of those on here. There's also a couple other things that we've included, which each of the resolutions from the commissions are in here. We also have included the latest appraisal that we have on Lot and Acres, which was a request from council during the work session. And then we've also included all of the public comments that we've received over the course of the last 10 months. So this should include everything the council requested, including all the technical amendments, and then these amendments that I'm sure you'll bring up and discuss tonight. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Ostrander. Councilmember Winger.
Thank you, Mayor Gabriel. I have a couple of questions for our city manager on this document.
Sure.
So going through this from the draft to the copy that you gave, and I didn't see it in the technical edit list. One of my requests was the quick table to add the lot size on the quick table, and I see that we added the zoning, but the lot size wasn't added to the quick table, and that was one of my multiple requests.
Thank you, Mayor Gabriel. Councilmember Winger. So that was an error on our part. We thought we had included what you had requested, but if you had asked for acreage as well on the quick table, which I'd have to confer with Mr. Foster, but that's probably something that we could add into there as well. I think there's room for it. So I would consider that a technical edit, and we can take care of that. Assuming, Ryan, you don't see an issue with adding that, do you?
Through the mayor. No, I don't think so. I think that would probably, I'm looking at an example of the quick table as well as with the detailed table. I think we could add the lot size to the quick tables, and that might kind of max out the space that we currently have. But I'd say that's doable.
Thank you. And then just a couple, if you go to map 9, which is on page 36, I had requested that the numbers that were overlaid 3 times be fixed, and in this document that was not fixed. And I've noticed that with quite a few where the numbers aren't really lined up in the parcel. As you can see up in that upper corner, the 04301402 is across the highway instead of centered into that lot size. Those were all things I asked for to be cleaned up in this edited version. And then one thing I did notice is maybe you can explain to us why this map shrunk. So from the other document, this one shrunk, and the only thing I could see different was there was a bolder font put up at the top, so there's two names on here ultimately. But with doing that, it shrunk it, and when you get further along looking at the maps, the numbers, like if you go to map 35, the numbers just look blurry. So I didn't know if the numbers got more blurry and went from a bold font to this blurrier font simply because the map shrunk in size. And I was hoping maybe you can explain why that happened.
Mr. Ostrander?
Yeah, thank you, Mayor Gabriel, Councilman Werner. So on the parcel numbers that are overlaid and the ones that are offset, again, those we just missed those. Those do need to be fixed still. As far as the size of the map, so what happened was when we had provided the draft document to you, it was all of this was in a PDF, and all of the maps were in one PDF file, and all of the narrative was in another PDF file. So when we compiled it, we would have to print both and then mesh them all together, which was a time-consuming process. Ryan has gotten this all now into Microsoft Word, so it's one document. The limitation of Word is that you've got these headers and footers that do shrink the maps. And we did talk about the possibility of increasing them a little bit. They're not going to be quite as big as what you saw in the draft, but we can make them a little bit bigger than what you saw here. As far as the blurriness, my speculation here is that's probably a printing issue more than anything else. I will say that, the real value, at least that I see of this document long-term, is going to be the ability to utilize this online. I don't think you're going to see a lot of people carrying these documents around. Probably they're going to be using it online primarily, but not to say that we don't want to make this as clean as we possibly can. So we will try to make those maps a little bit larger, and any of these small adjustments that we missed, be happy to hear about them, and we can fix them in the final.
Thank you. I appreciate that. No, I think this is a great document. This can be a great tool for the city. I just want to make sure that we're putting out the cleanest version of the document where we're not going back and trying to fix those. So thank you.
Councilmember next then.
I was just wanting to follow up on that. This document, it's printed here, but really it's going to reside electronically for people to look at, so they'll be able to manipulate and zoom in and zoom out and all of that, correct?
Mr. Ostrander?
Thank you, Mayor Gabriel. Councilmember Nax. Yeah, we will. Once this is finalized, we'll get it up as quickly as we can. A little bit of support from our GIS person to get it online. But yeah, I would anticipate that's where most people are going to be using it. You can do queries in there that you obviously can't do with a paper document. You can zoom in very closely to get additional detail that you can't in the print document. So yeah, it's going to be much more powerful to utilize that online than in print.
Discussion of resolution number 2020-51.
Yeah, thank you, Mayor Gabriel. Just along that line of technical edits, I just flipped open a page, and I'm on map 9, page 36, and I see where, there's like a stamp over of the parcel number, and where do we go? Where are we to go online? That could be edit within Microsoft. Do I have that right? Something so we don't have two numbers superimposed on each other.
Mr. Ostrander?
Just things to paw through.
Thank you, Mayor Gabriel. Vice Mayor Glendenny. Yeah, we'll fix that in the print document. Those won't show up online, so it won't be an issue.
Yeah, there might be others, so thank you.
Councilman Weir?
Thank you, Mayor Gabriel. Just a question, are we going to go through these amendments one at a time, or are we going to be approving this as a whole?
I would suggest one at a time. We can do this any way we want. There's 13, were proposed amendments from our commission and committee. The document as presented by administration is what we're working on. That's our basis. So you guys can start, either introducing the amendments or not, but that's the plan. Councilmember Naxton.
Yeah, my suggestion would be to start from the top and go linearly, 1 through 13, and go through them, and that might actually, there might be some things in between that we want to pick up, so we go through there, but that way we've got that checked off our box.
I'm here to do whatever you'd like to do, so when the body makes I'll call on you if you'd like to make a proposed amendment, and we'll go from there.
It is election time, isn't it?
So, any further discussion on resolution 2022-51? Can I hear, is there a motion to amend with any of the proposed amendments? Councilmember Winger.
Thank you, Mayor Gabriel. I'd like to motion to amend for the retention status of parcel numbers 04301-041 and 04301-039, which appears on map 15, floatplain basin subdivision and vicinity, be changed from mixed retain disposed lease only to retain for use as a buffer green space between the neighborhood and the airport.
Point of order.
Yes.
I see that there are the planning and zoning amendments, and then I see the beautification amendments, so that I can keep up and know exactly which one we're dealing with. If you would be so kind as to share with me exactly what page in the packet and which number, so that I can make sure that I'm staying up with what's happening, please.
Thank you. I was reading off of page 24, and we were starting as Mr. Nax had suggested at number 1, and we were going to work our way down that list. So I read off the first one on page 24.
Any discussion on the proposed amendment? Oh, I'm sorry. Yeah, there was. Was there?
Yeah, I'll second.
Okay. Thank you. Discussion, Councilmember Winger.
I'd just like to say that some of these parcels were discussion amongst many commissions. This was definitely in support of the commissions. And we did hear public testimony asking to retain the parcels on map 15, floatplain basin.
Councilmember Naxton.
At this point, I don't think that I don't support the amendment. A lot of what's there in that parcel is a ravine, and I think this is in the it's not in the it's in the general fund property, but it could lend itself to some residential development or something else in the future. We don't know what that is, and I think that kind of we're almost legislating a zoning in there by creating calling it that it's going to be not sold and it's going to be a buffer or a green strip. And I think that it's potentially short-sighted. And if something were to happen in the future, somebody were to suggest doing that, I think a future council and planning and zoning will certainly look at that city property and not move forward as appropriate. Since we don't know what could go there or might go there that would be appropriate, I don't support this amendment.
Councilmember Winger.
Thank you, Mayor Gabriel. Back in the 1990s, parcel ending in 041 and parcel ending in 042 were looking at being developed by Hall Quality Builders. There was a horseshoe shape cleared for that development, and through the combined efforts of all neighborhoods, both Woodland, Birch, and some from Inlet Woods, through testimony, they were able to stop that development due to concerns of the noise and the change of the atmosphere of the neighborhoods. And a lot of the residents that were part of that seemed to believe that, and we don't really have any records, but they seemed to believe that this was stopped and protected as a buffer zone between the neighborhoods. And through the neighborhood, they would like to see that continue to be upheld. that development wouldn't happen. Since the 90s, we have seen bigger planes come through our airstrip, and through the request of people that have worked on this initiative in the 90s, they would like to see our body uphold and retain this for buffer purposes.
Councilmember Next.
Just to counter that a little bit, we do have an airport master plan, and it documents currently, what the primary aircraft is that they use for sound and whatnot. And the sound contours don't even come close to those parcels. And those parcels, actually, you mentioned, Councilmember Winger mentioned 42, which I don't think was part of this motion, which is airport property. But I think that those parcels were purchased much more recently, and they are definitely for potentially for airport use on one side, and then the city potentially on the other. And we do have a very good landscaping plan that Mr. Glendenning and others help put together that protect for light and sound and other visible amenities. So again, at this juncture, I don't support the amendment.
Vice Mayor Glendenning.
Yeah, thank you. Just looking at the map here, I have a little larger copy. It looks like parcel ending in 1041 and 1042 are right against someone's residential lot. I can see that the lots, the parcels are big enough, maybe, to the north could accommodate some airport structure, but I just wonder, as a practical matter, is there something that we could maybe revise the amendment to refer to the airport master plan, or a future airport master plan that would ferret out these potential conflicts between a resident having a house here and an airplane function here? It seems kind of close. I hesitate to use the word buffer, but just as a practical matter, for the sensitivity of the residents here, is there a way we could reference a airport master plan that is due to be updated here in the next couple of years, and not allow this to be developed right now? Right now, if we say it can be developed, someone could come in and go through all the strictures, the subdivision, the planning and zoning thing, but if we could just maybe take a pause.
Yeah, just so you know.
Philosophically speaking.
The amendment, or the proposed amendment, is to retain, or just to, put the status of parcel ending in 1041 and 1039 to be retained for use as a buffer green space between neighborhood and airport. So that's what's on the table right now. You can make an amendment to the amendment. I don't know. I'm not sure what that looks like. That would be up to you. That we would discuss and hang on, Councilmember Next.
Yeah, sorry, just for what I believe that is general fund property. It's not in the reserve, so it really doesn't apply to, is my recollection, to the airport master plan. Yep. I could be corrected on that one, but I don't.
Mr. Ostrander.
Thank you, Mayor Gabriel. Councilmember Nackstead. So 1039 and 1041 are both general funds, so they are not referenced in the airport master plan.
Councilmember Winger, did you have you had your light on?
I'm good.
Okay. Councilmember Petty.
Yes, when I look at these two parcels, I look at it as opportunities for tax revenue and development for homes for our citizens, our expansion, and so I would not be inclined to retain. Thank you.
Further discussion? And just for folks that may be tuned in or listening right now, so when these recommendations are made for retain or dispose, lease only, these recommendations, they don't permanently change the status. We can't bind another council from, changing that. Just, this is the recommendation at this time. So just wanted to just point that out, okay? Any further discussion on the amendment? Clerk, please call the roll.
Mayor Gabriel?
No.
Councilmember Baisden?
Yes.
Vice Mayor Glendenning?
Yes.
Councilmember Sonart?
Yes.
Councilmember Petty?
No.
Councilmember Winger?
Yes.
Councilmember Naxted?
No?
You have 4 yes votes and 3 no votes.
So that will change that parcel in the land management plan from on parcels ending in 1041 and 1039 to from mixed retain disposal use only to retain. So for buffer green. So for clarity. Any further discussion on resolution number 2022-51 as amended? Councilmember Winger?
Thank you. I'd like to make another amendment, also from page 24, number 2. I'd like to recommend on map 15, floodplain basin subdivision of vicinity, combining parcels 04301039 and 04301040, and combining parcels 04301041 and 04301042, and change the recommendation to retain for all 4 parcels for use as a buffer between the airport and the residential neighborhood.
I would probably recommend we do an amendment to that amendment and withdraw, or we already did action on 1039 and 1041, so the remaining 2 would be the ones we would be talking about. Is that correct?
No, what we're doing now is we're combining 2 parcels and then combining an additional 2 parcels. Before, all we did was change it to retain, so that would be the difference between the 2.
I guess I read that wrong. Just for clarity, are you talking about a replat? Excuse me.
This was, I believe, brought forth by planning and zoning. So their attention, before that was combining that 040 and 039, and then combining the 041 and the 042. So they would become, yes, 1 parcel each. So a total of 2 parcels instead of 4.
So this would this entail a replat? Is that what I'm hearing? Oh, okay. Was there a second on that?
Just point of order. I have the map here, and we're going to combine, airport property and general fund property into 1 parcel. Is that the idea?
I guess let's go ahead and second it so we can discuss it.
I'll second.
Very good. Okay. Mr. Ostrander, would you be able to clarify that?
Yeah, thank you, Mayor Gabriel. Yeah, I don't actually think that we can do this. I don't think we can combine airport and general fund lands. You could, if you wanted just to move all of those to retain, you could modify that amendment and similar to what Mayor Gabriel said, and just change it to changing 1041 and 1042, change the recommendation to retain. And if you did that, then all 4 of those parcels would be retained without the subdivision or combining the parcels.
Okay, I would like to withdraw my amendment, or amend my amendment. How do I need to do that, Shelley?
You can request withdrawal, and if the second, Councilmember Baisden agrees, then it is withdrawn.
Okay.
Second.
Yep,
I'd like
okay,
to
so you can
offer a new
restate a new,
amendment.
very good, thank you.
Okay, I would like to amend and recommend on map 15, floodplain basin subdivision and vicinity to, for parcel 043010042, to change the recommendation to retain.
Second.
Would you like to include 040 also? We can do both of them at one time, if that's your intent.
No, I will stick with my original amendment, please.
Okay, so we're just dealing with
1042 for retaining.
1042. Okay. And you seconded, Mr. Bazin? Or Glendinning seconded? Okay, very good. Discussion on the motion? Councilmember Winger.
Thank you. Same thing, this was part of the original horseshoe shape development by Hall Quality Builders. Again, the residents were under the understanding that this would be protected for buffer noise and not be developed. There would be definite noise concern and burden and lessen the quality of life if there were airplane hangars built to this side of the fence in people's backyard, and the neighborhood would request that we retain this land. Thank you.
Councilmember Knoxton.
Thank you. This is airport property, was purchased with airport land, funds, and I think that doing this might be considered a diversion of funds, perhaps, in doing so, in creating a buffer out of it, because that's not what, it was intended. And there are no plans for hangars on the other side of a road, on the other side of the airport. It does provide the airport with some opportunity that we don't know. And like I said earlier, we do have a landscaping plan that specifically talks about development on the airport and how the sound and light will be mitigated and whatnot. But since there aren't any plans, it would be unlikely there'd be hangars there, probably in my lifetime. But at any rate, limiting that to a buffer and hang on to it as one, I think is inappropriate for a couple of reasons, so I don't support this.
Further discussion? Councilmember Bazin.
Thank you, Mayor. So I just want to be clear. So this is airport land that we're talking about with these two lots, correct?
Just this one.
Just this one.
Well, yeah, the one that is part of the amendment right now, yes.
Thank you.
Vice Mayor Glendinning.
Yeah, if we just use the word retain, okay, that will preserve it and not invite how can we say, a disposal that doesn't have a further review of the airport master plan, which is coming up. It will be able to address neighborhood sensitivities and still have the potential at some future time to realize economic value from it for the airport.
Oh,
I'm not sure what that.
Instead of saying retain buffer, just say retain. Okay, and it'll be retained in the airport fund, and we can examine it at a future airport master plan, noting the concerns of the neighborhood and the potential industrial use or airport use of that property. That's revealed tonight that there'll be no hangars put in there, but what else could be put in there? What could be put in there that would be appealing to the neighborhood? These are discussions that are perhaps in the future.
so are you going to make an amendment to the amendment to change from retain and remove buffer? Is that where we're going?
That's
with
my
it?
intent. In others, we will retain it.
Okay. Would you like to make the motion?
Yes,
so
we'll
we can
make the motion,
discuss
amend
it?
a motion to amend the motion to say the words retain only.
Retain only, okay.
I'll second.
Okay, further discussion on the amendment to the amendment, which would be to Councilmember Knoxton.
No, I
Actually, it
just-
might be easier, cleaner to, since you were second, and I agree with that, Councilmember Winger, is to withdraw your amendment and just go to retain, and that way we're not.
I would like to withdraw my amendment.
Concurrence of the second?
Yes.
Okay, very good. Okay, you can go ahead and make your amendment, Councilman Winger, which would just refer to retain instead of,
Okay, I'd like to recommend parcel 04301-042 to be retained.
thank you. Discussion on the amendment.
Second?
Yeah, Vice
Thank
Mayor
you.
Bennett.
Request unanimous consent.
Unanimous consent was requested. Is there any objection? Seeing none, the amendment is approved. Councilman Winger.
Just working my way down this list, if that's okay with everybody else. I'd like to amend the narrative on page 63 regarding parcel 0430142 by adding the language, I'm sorry, give me a second. I'd like to withdraw that.
Okay. Mr. Ostrander.
Thank you, Mayor Gabriel. I don't think Amendment 3 works with the last, so we could skip over that one, yeah.
Right.
I apologize for that.
Just, Mayor,
Yeah,
just an observation, as long as we are on this page.
sure.
I'm looking at parcel 0431804443, and it is a huge parcel that encompasses the floodplain basin. If you will look on page 62 of our booklet and look down at the end where the parcel intersects 4th and 5th Avenue, it shows that this parcel butts again right up against a residential area, and without going through the machinations and all the gestures that we just made, if the note could be made that, granted, this parcel encompasses the floodplain, but there's a good portion of it that perhaps should not be developed industrially because of it's right in the backyard of a residential property.
Councilman Axler?
I'm looking at the map too, and I believe that's city property to the west, that rectangular property, and it's airport property to the south. It does
Right.
touch residential property just in a corner, in the
Yeah.
southwest corner.
So I guess that's my question. What are we going to do with this property? You said what? It's by the airport.
There's a deed restriction, as I recall, on the property to the west of that portion you're talking about that's between 4th and 5th.
Yes?
And it's city-owned property. It was deeded over by the DNR, I believe, a couple of years ago to us. I remember clarifying that.
Okay, yeah, I'm just looking at residential houses and this. Thank you. for the
And that might be more appropriately addressed as a part of the master plan, I would think.
Right, it's just, as long as we're talking about this will clarify any future discussions, and we can apply our thoughts directly to it. And thank you for the advice.
Councilman Axton?
Thank you. I move moving down to item 4, I move the retention status of parcel number 04101-004, which appears on map 16, Kenai Municipal Airport, be changed from retain to mixed, retain/dispose, lease only.
Second.
Second that.
Let me catch up here with that again, just to make sure we got the, Mr. Ostrander?
Thank you, Mayor Gabriel. And if it would help the council, I can kind of explain what these amendments, why they came about on each one of them as we get to them. This one came from the Airport Commission, and the reason that they wanted to change it from retain to mixed, retain dispose, is because there are portions of that parcel that would be developable for lease lots, and if we were to put it in retained status, it would not allow that. So this allows us to develop a portion of that as lease lots.
Any further comments on the proposed amendment?
Request unanimous consent?
Unanimous consent was requested. Is there any objection? Seeing none, the amendment is adopted, or
Could I
approved,
take
rather.
1 minute at ease, please?
Yep, we can make it a couple minutes. Take a brief at ease. Back on the record. So the amendment on the floor is on, which was the fourth suggested amendment, the retention status of parcel 041010004, which appears on map 16, be changed from retain to mixed, retain, disposed, lease only, correct?
Yeah, Mayor, I think I requested unanimous consent on that,
Oh, that one
on number 4.
on 4? Okay.
And,
5.
but I don't recall if you
Oh,
asked if
that's-
there was any,
No, that's right. Sorry. I have a problem with my iPad here. I'm trying to work through. I think I got it now. It's throwing me off a little bit. Vice Mayor Glenn.
Yeah, point over, could you call out a map number again, please?
So now we're on, so that was approved. There was no objection to unanimous consent. So if we're going to continue on with our sort of course here, we would be looking at amendment number 5. Councilmember next then.
Yeah, and I'd like to make that amendment. I move to retain the retention status of parcel 043222023, which appears on map 23, Cook Inlet Industrial Air Park subdivision, be changed from disposed to disposed/lease -lease only.
Second.
Further discussion, Councilmember, or I think Mr. Ostrander want to weigh in. It looks like Mr. Ostrander.
Yeah, thanks, Mayor Gabriel. Just a very quick summary. This was recommended by the Airport Commission upon the recommendation of the airport manager to change from disposed to disposed lease only. The lease only provides greater flow of revenue to the airport than a disposal does, and so they felt that it was important to make this lease only.
I'd ask for unanimous.
Thank you. Unanimous consent was requested. Is there any objection? Seeing none, that motion is approved. Pleasure, council. Go ahead, Councilmember
I'd
Weir.
like to make thank you, Mayor Gabriel. I'd like to make an amendment to change the title of the City of Kenai Land Management Plan to the City of Kenai Land Management Inventory and Recommendations. And for reference, this came from Planning and Zoning.
Second.
Bless you. Discussion on the motion to amend? Seeing none, Councilmember Weir.
Thank you, Mayor Gabriel. From the comments from commissioners, they felt that this was more of an inventory than a plan. So, and then others felt that this was recommendations, and not so much of a plan, or, as we've said, no other body would be binded to retains and disposal. So these are really just our recommendations. And so that was some of what they kind of put together as far as the title was encompassing, both that this is an inventory and that these are recommendations.
Thank you for that. Councilmember, or Mr. Ostrander, sorry.
Thank you, Mayor Gabriel. I also, just for council's information, Parks and Recreation and Beautification also made this recommended amendment as well, along with Planning and Zoning.
Further discussion on the amendment? Councilmember next then.
I don't really have an objection, but I do have a question, I suppose. Sometimes there's a lot in a name, and is changing the name of this, does it change the document? Is it difficult to do? Is there anything we might be missing?
Mr. Ostrander.
Thank you, Mayor Gabriel. Councilmember Nexted. No, I don't think so. And in particular, when we talk about the fact that, this is going to be an online resource, so that I think the title becomes less important. And while the City of Kenai Land Management Inventory and Recommendations doesn't roll off the tongue quite like the Land Management Plan does, I do think it more accurately reflects what the document does.
Thank you.
Request unanimous consent.
Thank you, Councilmember Petty. Unanimous consent was requested. Is there any objection? Seeing none, that amendment is approved. Councilmember Weir.
Thank you, Mayor Gabriel. Moving on down to number 7 on our page 24, I'd like to amend and recommend parcel 043-17038, map 17, Gutsy subdivision, Kenai Cemetery, be changed from retain to mixed retain disposed lease only, and modified narrative on page 71 relative to this parcel to state subdivide cemetery property from the northeast portion, which would be usable for airport purposes.
Second.
Discussion?
Thank you, Mayor Gabriel. I believe at
Oh,
Plan.
sorry, yes, Councilmember, I was just trying to get caught up here. Go ahead,
sorry.
Councilmember Weir.
Thank you, Mayor Gabriel. I believe this as well came from Planning and Zoning, and maybe Parks and Recs as well. I feel like both maybe weighed in on this one. Basically, they felt that there was a section of land up there that was not going to be utilized by the cemetery with our ongoing new section of the cemetery up on the hill, and they wanted to give that section back for airport purposes and use.
Thank you for that. Discussion from council?
Request unanimous consent.
Thank you. Unanimous consent was requested. Is there any objection? Seeing none, that amendment is approved. Anybody want to stab at number 8?
I personally am not interested in 8, 9, or 10. I would be happy to introduce 11.
Okay, is there any,
I concur with that.
okay. Councilman Weir.
Moving on, page 25, number 11, I would like to amend and recommend parcel 043273030, 0432731, and 0432732 on map 17 Gutsy subdivision, Kenai Cemetery, remain as disposed lease only, but the management intent of those parcels is such that parking would be allowed to support the adjacent softball fields.
Second.
Discussion, Councilman Weir.
Thank you. I believe this came from Parks and Recs. They fully support the leases to the trucking outfits that use this. They just wanted to make sure that sometime down the field that they didn't say, hey, you can't park here, and they just wanted to make sure that that space would be usable for the softball events that get to be pretty lengthy, especially that 4th of July. And that was their just concern is future ability to use that area as parking, but there has been noted a good relationship this far.
Very good. Councilmember next then.
I think that the property probably could be used for parking, but I think that you know, it is airport property within the reserve, and it shouldn't be specifically there in a document for something that's other than airport use, which is, you know, the leases that we have in there right now are non-airport uses, and they come up annually, you know, for parking with Doyle's Fuel Service, and been doing it for I think decades. But at any rate, all of that property on the outside the ball fields are on is airport property. If we have a developer that comes in and says, I want to put an airport use development right in the middle of that ball field, we would have a hard time we couldn't say no without buying it. And so having said that, I mean, the ball fields we all enjoy, and the green field strip and all of that, and I think it's probably something we just leave alone. We can certainly leave it as lease, and when we're not leasing it, we can use it for parking. It kind of is. And, you know, so I wouldn't suggest making a change.
Further discussion, Vice Mayor Glendenning.
Yeah, so perhaps you're suggesting that really might not be a conflict. I mean, if someone's, you know, leasing parking something there, and if there happens to be room to put a row of station wagons in, that could happen without conflict on this property.
Councilman Weir.
I think that Vice Mayor Glendinning may have a question.
Yeah, I had a
Was that
question,
close?
in there. In other words, as a practical matter, we lease it, and it's not really being used. Everybody play nice and let people park during a ball game. Is that right? Or is it an exclusivity to this property?
Yeah, okay, very good. Mr. Ostrander?
Thank you, Mayor Gabriel. Vice Mayor Glendinning, that's the way it's worked forever, just because there is a really good relationship there, and the lessee has always been willing to allow people to park there. And as long as that remains that way, it'll continue to function in that way in the future.
Okay, and that's the flavor I got from listening into commissions and committees. Thank you for the illustration.
Councilman Winger?
Thank you. And I mean, I agree with Mr. Naxted. And it was noted by the commissioners that there's always been a good working relationship. I think their concern was just what if something changes along the line? They wanted something in there. But I would be happy to withdraw my amendment as well.
Okay, very good. Concurrence of the second?
I concur.
Very good. So that was, for those keeping track at home, that was number 11. Any further proposed amendments? Councilmember Winger.
Thank you. Moving on to number 12, I'd like to amend recommending removing the word required and replace with the word consideration. Not knowing what the development could be, the wording should not be so definitive for parcel 045-01003, which is on page 153 and page 154.
Is there a second?
Second.
Very good. Mr. Ostrander.
Thank you, Mayor Gabriel. Just real quickly, so this, if you look in the last sentence on page 153, it currently says it is recommended that screening be a requirement of the development plan for the southern portion of the parcel. This would change that to it is recommended that screening be a consideration of the development plan.
Very good. Vice Mayor Glendinning.
Yeah, thank you, Mayor Gabriel. As an author of the landscaping ordinance, and when we do rezone and subdivide this, I believe that will come into play, and adequate developmental sensitivities will be honored at that time. So I support this idea, and it'll all be washed away when we do rezone it anyway, and we can tighten up our descriptions then. But I believe the legislation contained in our landscaping ordinance would be the recommendation, would be the practice, would be the desire, would be the intent of any disposal of this land.
Very good. Further discussion, Councilmember Naxton.
I would, if this motion were to fail, I would be in support of deleting the whole last sentence, frankly, altogether, in the narrative. And
I would be happy to pull my amendment if you'd like to make that amendment.
I'll do that.
Councilmember Winger.
I would like to withdraw my amendment.
I concur. It's worth a second.
Very good. Councilmember Naxton.
I would move to remove the last sentence of the last paragraph on page 153 that says it is recommended that screening be a requirement of the development plan for the southern portion of the parcel.
Second.
And it also is in 154 in the comment section.
Very good. Both locations have moved and seconded. Discussion from council? Councilmember Winger.
I agree. That I think addresses the concern. Maybe Mr. Ostrander could let us know what commission brought this forth to us.
Ostrander.
Thank you, Mayor Gabriel. Councilmember Winger, this was actually brought to us by Councilmember Naxted.
Okay. Sorry. Thank you.
Okay. Any discussion on the,
Request unanimous.
very good. Unanimous consent was requested. Is there any objection? Seeing none, the amendment is approved. Further discussion, Councilmember Winger?
All right, number 13 on page 25. I'd like to amend recommending parcel 04501-061, which is on map 30, Barron Park subdivision, be changed from disposed to retain on the remainder of the parcel not utilized by the Triumphant Theater or the dog park for the expansion of the recreational area.
Second.
Discussion? Councilmember Winger?
And maybe Mr. Ostrander could correct me, but I believe maybe this was brought forth by Parks and Recs, and the intent was they would like to see the recreational area around the pond expanded to be better utilized. They seem to think that we're missing a key area to expand. And I can validate the amount of traffic, even on a cloudy, rainy day, there were people swimming in the pond. So it is definitely a well-utilized area, and I think we have room to really expand and grow that recreational area in our city.
Mr. Ostrander?
Thank you, Mayor Gabriel. Councilmember Winger, I think Brian needs to weigh in on this, but I believe this was brought to us by a member of the public, and at the council work session, I think it was you that had said you wanted to see it included. No, Ryan, do you have that comment or where that originated from?
Mr. Foster?
Yes, through the mayor. Actually, it might be just take me a minute to find that. I'm not entirely sure.
Okay, yep, take a break, ease. We'll take a brief at ease.
I do have that marked down in my book.
Back on the record, there was a question of where that proposed amendment came from. Mr. Ostrander?
Thank you, Mayor Gabriel. So that did come to us from Dave Peck, and as I recall during the council work session, we went through these, and Councilmember Winger was the one that asked that we include this as an amendment for tonight. So it did originate from Mr. Peck, and then Councilmember Winger asked that we include it for your consideration for tonight.
Very good, thank you.
Request unanimous consent.
Thank you. Unanimous consent was requested. Is there any objection? Seeing none, that amendment is approved. Further discussion? You good? Councilman Winger.
I would just like to say again, thank you to all of administration for putting this together. I know this took a long time to put together. This was a long process for everybody. I appreciate the public that gave us input, and I especially appreciate our commissions for taking the time to go over this and give us some of their recommendations. And again, I just would like to thank everybody.
Thank you. Further discussion? I guess I would have a question of administration as far as when would you plan or propose or expect to see the website sort of up and running and interactive for folks to log in? Mr. Oshner?
Thank you, Mayor Gabriel. Well, Ryan has a week before he leaves the city, so I'm going to press him to get this finalized before he leaves. And then we'll get it online as soon as possible. I'm not sure if he's going to be able to accomplish that this week, but as soon as possible after that, we'll get Gary Greenberg involved and get it out there for the public.
Very good, thank you. So any further discussion on resolution number 2022-51 as amended?
Request unanimous consent.
Thank you. Unanimous consent was requested. Is there any objection? Councilmember Petty.
No, I unanimous consent with the unity of our council for this. It's greatly appreciated. Thank you.
Yes, wonderful, and I appreciate administration's work on this. I think we started this in 2018, so four something years ago, and I think it's going to be a really nice tool for people that want to look at doing business in the city of Kenai, and you know, that's making things more efficient. So certainly the work of everybody that went into this, your staff and yourself, certainly appreciate it. So seeing no objection, resolution number 2022-51 as amended is adopted. So that brings us to item F1, unfinished business, ordinance number 3293-2022, amending dependencies to the Kenai Municipal Code to delete cemetery regulations, amending Title 24 Municipal Cemetery to include certain portions of the appended cemetery regulations and make other housekeeping changes, and adopting a Kenai Municipal Cemetery Regulations policy. And I will note there's a clerk's note that at the meeting of June 1st, 2022, this ordinance was postponed to this meeting. A motion to enact is on the floor. And I think Councilmember Winger had a... So that would be... So, Ms. Sainer, maybe we could...
Yeah, council page 66.
Yeah, I think that's why I'm trying to drill down to right here, so. Yeah, so let me see, okay. Very good. So yeah, the proposed amendments on that memo from Councilman Winger's on, what was that, 84? Yep, 84.
Yes, page 84.
Councilman Winger.
Thank you, Mayor Gabriel. I'd like to make a motion to amend Kenai Municipal Cemetery Regulations as attached to ordinance 3293-2022 and reference for adoption in section 4 of the ordinance to amend the prohibited section of the policy to include fires or flames as prohibited. So fire, it would read fire/flame. Open flames or fires of any type are prohibited within the confines of the cemetery. This includes candles, memorial lanterns, barbecues, or any type of flame or fire.
Second, request unanimous consent.
Thank you. Unanimous consent was requested. Is there any objection? Seeing none, that motion is approved. Councilmember Winger?
Thank you, Mayor Gabriel. I'd like to make a motion to amend the Kenai Municipal Cemetery Regulations as attached to Ordinance 3293-2022 in reference for adoption, Section 4 of the ordinance, to allow picket fences or perimeter around an intermittent site by deleting the following from the plants and decorations prohibited section of regulations. So enclosures such as picket fences or establishing a perimeter around an intermittent site are prohibited.
Second.
Discussion? Oh, go ahead, I'm sorry. Councilmember Winger.
The reason why I brought this forth is there are people that do like to put a fence around their grave. Ultimately, some of the concern I heard was you just don't really want a loved one being mowed right over the top of it. I get it's a concern for maintenance. This is something that we've worked around in our previous cemetery for a very long time, and I believe there's no harm or foul in having a little perimeter around someone's loved one.
Further discussion? Vice Mayor Glendenning?
Yeah, as someone who has, how can we say, without sounding too crass, a lot of people who are interred from our immediate family. Many of the plots that they're in have just modest edifices, a little picket fence, maybe something for a vase or whatever. And I think some type of uniqueness to commemorate an individual's existence, I think, should be allowed within our city. That's my philosophy, and I hope we do allow some individualization of a person's final resting place. Thank you.
Councilmember Naxton.
Thank you, Mayor. I guess when I read through this initially, I was surprised that picket fences weren't going to be allowed. I've seen them elsewhere. But then it kind of begs the question what a picket fence is. You know, there's picket fences that are as tall as I am, I suppose, or they're 13, 14 inches or something like that. And so I'm not sure which we're talking about. And I guess I have a question through administration on maintenance. Since I've not actually watched it, do you mow on the top of a grave, drive across it? Or, I mean, how is the maintenance performed and how will this hinder maintenance?
Mr. Ostrander.
Thank you, Mayor Gabriel. Councilmember Naxton. I would like Mr. Walker to talk about that. I know he's become very familiar with what it takes to maintain the cemetery. So if you could talk a little bit about maintenance, general maintenance of the cemetery, how you approach it, and then also talk specifically about picket fences and why the administration had originally or had recommended that they not be allowed.
Mr. Walker.
Thank you, Mayor. So we do not mow over the graves. We string trim around all those. The picket fences, we also have to string trim around. It takes a lot of work. And then there's also quite a few of those that have not been taken care of for a very long time. And so currently it takes about 3 of our staff members a day and a half to complete mowing, string trimming, raking, taking care of general maintenance of the cemetery. And so for us, and a standard, so far we see everything from picket fences to that are made out of brick, aren't picket fence, but it's like a barrier, like a fence. We have, I'll call it livestock fence. We have white picket fence. We have any variation in between. Nothing. I would say the tallest that we have is 4 feet, and it's kind of like the wire fence, but it's all variations between that.
Councilmember Basin.
Thank you, Mayor. So I guess this is kind of one of those lines that I think we're all going to sway one way or another. My family owns a family cemetery, and I understand the maintenance that takes place, and it's another state. I'm trying to think from our parks and recs what it's going to take to maintain the cemetery, and also try to be thoughtful to the people who are going to be interned there. It's It's a difficult one because I think, I think we need to have standards within the city cemetery, so it makes it easier for us to maintain. And if we put it up front, if it's something that the family does not like, then they don't have to intern them there. They have other options, I guess would be my opinion.
I have a question for Mr. Walker, just for clarity. So you say you don't mow over the grave sites at all. Are those, how are those maintained if they're not mowed over? Are those all string mowed?
Yes, thank you, Mayor. So the old cemetery, the one that we're working with now, is incredibly difficult to mow in and around. It's not laid out very linear, and so it's a lot of push mowing and a lot of string trimming. That's mostly how that's done. We can do a rider on the perimeters and a few of the common areas like the paths, but most of it is done by hand, push mowing and string trimming.
So I guess my question is that if the actual grave site, if it's not mowed over, and those are string trimmed, right? I guess on the actual. I mean, if there's a fence around there and you're going to string trim it anyway, I'm trying to make the connection of how much more maintenance it's going to be.
I guess I should ask for a clarification. When you say, are we talking about the entire grave or like the headstone?
I was thinking about the entire.
Yeah,
grave.
so where we can push mow, we do push mow over that. If it's a flat headstone, we're not push mowing or mowing over flat headstones or anything of that sort. And then we string trim around all of those things. And so if there's a picket fence, we have to string trim around that and in it.
But you mow over the actual grave then if there's there's no fence or any obstruction. Okay,
Yeah.
that's what I wanted.
We would have to maintain the grass.
And then how often do you perform maintenance over there, Mr. Walker?
Weekly, so it's every week.
Every week, okay.
Yep.
Vice Mayor Glenn.
Thank you, Mayor Gabriel. Yeah, in your analysis, you compared the difficulty in the existing cemetery to the new plot. The new plot is dress geometrically laid out, correct? The current cemetery that we had, we actually inherited it from a defunct, how can we say, funeral parlor, okay? And an interested individual weeded it, tended it, brought it up to current standards, but there was no requirement for dress and even layout. So the comparison of what it takes to maintain the current cemetery to how the new one's going to be developed, I don't think is actually directly applicable. Am I correct?
Mr. Walker?
I suppose, yes, and, the more things you add, the more things we have to string trim around and take care of and be mindful of. And so it will just be an addition to what we're already doing in the current cemetery. So it's taking us a day to a day and a half now to do the old cemetery. I'm not sure what it will be as the new cemetery comes online and more people, I know it's laid out better, but that'll be 2.5 days of our 5 days of mowing and trimming. And
just to follow up. Yeah, so the cemetery is really not a profit center, but it is a cost center. Mm-hmm. What will society bear the cost of for the memory and warm embrace and our thoughtfulness for our deceased that we place there? What is that worth? Is that a budget item, or is that just something that we absorb? Say, like we sponsor a rec center that doesn't turn a dime, or other places that we just provide as a sincere contribution to our community. I don't think the cost analysis should be a real part of this discussion. We're not talking about concrete barriers. We're not talking about big obstructions. We're talking about thoughtful considerations for memory of our loved ones. Thank you.
Councilman Winger.
Thank you, Mayor Gabriel. From everything I've seen in this new layout for the new cemetery that we're talking about, these policies applying to, they are going to be spaced adequately for equipment to get through row to row around. Ultimately, they have to have correct spacing to get equipment in. So it will be spaced adequately, unlike our existing cemetery. And then we did hear that basically without a picket fence, they would mow over the gravesite, just not the headstone. And I think that really is the concern of people not really wanting somebody mowing over their loved one, headstone or not. And that's ultimately why I brought this forward. I think we can have a nice, clean, well-maintained cemetery without taking the humanity away from the family that are there to visit their loved ones.
Councilmember Naxton.
Thank you. So if, through the Paul here, if we allow it a picket fence and the grass grows as it does, are we going to step over the fence onto the grave to maintain the grass there, or are we just going to let it go?
Mr. Walker through City Manager.
Thank you, council member. Thank you, Mayor. Right now, we tend to put our string trimmer in a little bit. It's such a touchy, fine line. There are some people who take care of their space very well, and then there's other people who don't take care of it all. And so we try to meet in the middle. I don't see us walking inside of those. To me, that's just going to invite an accident. We'll likely just have to put our string trimmer over the fence and work with it the best that we can.
Mr. Councilmember Naxton.
Thank you. I'm just trying to get a handle on, so a wood picket fence is not forever, and it starts falling over. It's a windy spot. It rots. It gets faded. It's right next to somebody else's loved one, and you got kind of like we were talking about down Lawton, I guess, you know, or wherever, or Linwood. So do you start pulling out fences? Do you, I mean, how do we maintain somebody's property that we've allowed to go in there that is falling apart?
Mr. Walker.
Thank you, Councilmember Nance. Thank you, Mayor. That is a very good question. I'm 4.5 months into figuring this part of it out, and I have those same questions. I know that we do, at the beginning and the end of each year, we put out statements saying we're going to do a cleanup, and you know, come and pick up some of your things if you leave out certain trinkets or things of that matter. And then there's a date set to that, and then after that we go through. Purely from what I have just noticed in the cemetery that exists, those things have not happened. As far as a fence that has fallen apart, it stays how it is. And I've just kind of worked away with it that it has so far. So we have all variations of nice fence to stuff that should honestly probably be replaced or taken down.
Councilman Winger.
Thank you. I guess one of the questions I would have would be, I would be happy to amend this to put a fencing size in there. If that would better help regulate this as far as that goes, I'd be happy to amend and add a fencing size limit in there.
I might have a question about that, so hold on. Councilmember Petty.
Yes, I appreciate what Councilman Winger and Glendenning are saying, but this is a new space, and we're There is not an annual fee. I know where I come from, there is an annual fee for the sites, for the maintenance, and we're starting something new here. And like Councilman Baisden said, if this doesn't meet to the requirements of the family, there's other opportunities for them out there. And with this, I am opposed to having picket fences and other accoutrements around the graves, and to make it as streamlined and efficient and respectful to our loved ones who have passed away. I do not support this amendment.
So I have a question for Mr. Walker. Is there like, is there a manufactured like cemetery fencing that's sold, or is there, something that, can be popped out of the ground and then put back in, and, something along those lines? The reason I ask, I'm kind of going through this, we're doing grave prep this week for my mom's service interment on Sunday, and it's, for some reason, there's something about having a perimeter to mark that, to delineate it from other graves or adjacent grave sites. So, it's like, I'm struggling to find some middle ground here. I was just curious if there was any type of, or if you're aware of anything that is, other cemeteries you have done to help facilitate some of the maintenance.
Thank you, Mayor. Not that I'm aware of. In pure transparency, this is the first cemetery that I've had to take care of. I have mowed cemeteries in my past life, but to be responsible for the policy and what it looks like going forward, most all fences that I have ever seen typically come from a lawn and garden store. It's kind of your landscaping, small decorative fencing. I've not actually researched to see if there is a specific cemetery fence that exists for plots, but kind of what I am seeing here is what I've also seen in Indiana.
Councilmember Basin.
Yeah, thank you. So I guess I'm going to go back to, I think our cemetery right now represents what most family cemeteries look like. Pretty much anything goes. And there's nothing wrong with that. But again, I think the city basically, if you're going to entrust the city to take care of your loved ones for pretty much eternity, we should have, I think, some standards, make it beautiful, have it to where it's easy for us to maintain. I think we can do all that. And again, if you want to do more than that, there's plenty of opportunities, I think, to do that. This is publicly owned, and it's up to us to be able to maintain it, because you're not paying any fees to maintain it once you're interned there. And I think it's difficult because it puts pressure on those who are taking care of it. They don't want to be the bad guy when it comes to having to dispose of a fence that's maybe been there 10 years and rotted. I get that, because maybe a loved one is still coming back to visit. But for those who are not coming back to visit, then you have to deal with those issues too. I think we should try to make it as simple as easy and beautiful and a great place to put our loved ones. But I think there probably ought to be a few limitations on what we can and can't do, or again, we're kind of back to the same spot that we are right now. And I think it's very difficult for our departments probably to maintain that cemetery. And I can just tell you from again, an example from my family cemetery. At the end of the year, we wipe everything out that's been done because we have to take care of it, and we're not charging anybody for those things either. So it's up to us to maintain that. We do offend some folks when we do that, and it's typically relatives. So.
Further discussion? Seeing none, clerk, please call the roll. Oh, sorry. Vice
Yeah,
Mayor,
just
go ahead.
describe what a yes vote and a no vote means.
Ms. Sainer.
So a yes vote will amend the Kenai Cemetery regulations as attached to ordinance 2023 referencing for adoption. It would take, catching up with you guys, it would take the plant and decorations, I'm sorry, where did it go? It would take out the words enclosures such as picket fences or establishing a perimeter around an internment site are prohibited. It would remove that from the policy completely. A yes vote on the motion would remove that from the policy.
Thank you.
Any further discussion? Councilman, or Mr. Oshner?
Sorry, Mayor Gabriel, I just wanted to expand on that. So just for absolute clarity, a yes vote means that picket fences would be allowed.
Well, and I guess in addition, picket fences or establishing a perimeter. So, yeah, there could be, pavers or rocks or things. Or
A yes vote would be status quo is what's allowed right now. A no vote would be that we would not be doing those type of things that we allow today, correct? In the new section.
And this is just in the new section, right?
Yes.
Any further discussion? Clerk, please call the roll.
Councilmember Baisden?
No?
Vice Mayor Glendenning?
Yes?
Councilmember Sonart?
No.
Councilmember Petty?
No.
Councilmember Winger?
Yes.
Councilmember Naxted?
No?
And Mayor Gabriel?
Yes.
We have 3 yes votes and 4 no votes. The motion to amend failed.
Thank you. Councilman Williams?
Can we do an at ease to clarify this next amendment?
Sure. Take a brief at ease. Back on, excuse me, back on the record. Councilmember Winger?
Thank you, Mayor Gabriel. I'd like to make a motion to amend the Kenai Municipal Cemetery Regulations as attached to Ordinance 3293-2022 in reference for adoption, Section 4 of the ordinance, to remove the time limitations for when plastic, silk, or artificial flowers are permitted in the cemetery by amending the second paragraph of the plants, decorations, permitted section of the regulations as follows. Plastic or silk flowers and artificial decorations are permitted. We would be deleting between May 1st and September 30th. Burials occurring between October 1st and April 30th may have decorations displayed but are subject to removal 30 days after burial.
Is there a second?
Second.
Discussion? Councilman Winger?
Thank you, Mayor Gabriel. What this will do is basically right now, as the sets, if you were to die in May 1st through September 30th, you would be allowed to have silk flowers and artificial decorations. However, if you die October 1st through April 30th, you may have decorations and they would be removed within a 30-day time frame. Unfortunately, it really, you can't pick when you die, what time of the year you die, what month you die. So allowing that and not putting a specification on it is why I brought this forth.
Councilmember Nexon?
Thank you. I guess that when I die, I probably will stay dead. And my family will, they can come and they can put flowers out on an annual basis and then remove them. And I think that after October 1st, we can be expecting their first snow and all of that. I think that's, so, you know, and again, it's probably for a lot of the same reasons, you know, for maintenance and whatnot. This is going to be a relatively windy area, and a lot of those things will move around. But at any rate, we can. I think that the way it was written is probably. I guess I disagree with the amendment and to leave it the same way as it is.
Further discussion, Councilmember Winger?
Thank you. Again, you can't pick what time the weather strikes up either. I think we have winds that we see, high winds year-round, and not just high winds from the month of October to April. So ultimately, the wind will be a factor in that May 1st through September window as well. And it doesn't seem, it really doesn't make any sense to then not allow something through other months. Typically, we have some years we see snow in October, some years we don't see snow till November. Some years snow melts in March, and other years it's here till May. So again, we can't really predict when we die or what the weather will be, but allowing loved ones to be able to leave flowers, plastic, silk, or artificial should be allowed.
Further discussion? Vice Mayor Glendenny?
Yeah, I think allowing some individual expression is important. You know, when your loved one dies, you really don't notice the season of the year unless you're in Chicago and there's a bitter November wind blowing, but you still want to remember them in a very special way. And we understand that we put something down and it may not last. It's ashes to ashes, dust to dust. But in the instant, in the moment, when we have this deep, abiding memory of these people, the thoughts, the emotions, we should be able to place something there and maybe even come back in a week or 3 or 4 and look at it. And then sometimes we move on and they no longer remain. It's ashes to ashes, dust to dust, but in the instant, you know, it's important that we have the ability to place a unique individual, a decorative memory, memorative item for our loved ones. Thank you.
Councilmember Nexon?
I just want to make sure. I mean, the way the ordinance is written, I believe that that it is permitted to have silk flowers and decorations between May 1st and September 30th. So we wouldn't be removing that, unless I'm missing something. And kind of more
30 days.
Councilmember Winger through the
Yeah, we're not removing that. That would stay as is. What we would be, ultimately would be removing would be the limitations that are being put on from that October 1st timeframe till the April 30th.
Further discussion? Councilman Winger?
Maybe the, Ms. Sanger can let us know what a yes or a no vote would be, please.
Ms. Sainer?
Thank you. Through the mayor, a yes vote will allow artificial flowers and decorations year-round in the cemetery, and there won't be any date restrictions. A no vote would leave the policy as drafted, which is the existing appendices, which only allows those things between May 1st and September 30th, and only during internment services for 30 days after burial between October and April 30th.
Thank you. Further discussion? Councilmember Sonart?
This would be a question for Mr. Walker, but you haven't gone through a full winter here, so I'm not sure. My thought was, okay, so you bury a loved one during the winter, you have your flowers there, the flowers stay there for 30 days, and then at the end of that time frame, the flowers are then picked up. Is that correct?
Mr.
The
Walker?
way it is now, the way it is now.
Mr. Walker through Mr. Ostrander.
Thank you, Mayor. Thank you, council member. You are correct. I've not been through a whole winter yet. I may ask Shelley if she could help me as well.
Ms. Sainer?
Thank you. Through the mayor. So for this one in particular, on the staff memo, we do support this change, and the reason is I've been managing cemetery regulations for the last 10 years, and you see a lot of people put artificial poinsettias up at Christmas wreaths, and things like that. And if somebody were to put live flowers at that same time, we're still going to have to pick up the flowers when they are looking old and tattered, whether they're artificial or not.
So my question was that during the winter time, the way the code reads now is that the flowers get 30 days.
Correct.
Okay. So if we were to change that and the flowers could stay there the whole time, would that create an undue cleanup in the spring when the snow melts and maybe the flowers have been blown 50 yards this away, or I don't know. That's what I was going to ask Mr. Walker, but.
So thank you. Sorry. Through the mayor. We're still going to do regular maintenance. In the winter, there's times that they're going to get buried in the snow and we're not going to see them in the spring, but there's a large spring cleanup scheduled in early May every year to get it back in order. Okay. So we'll be picking up our live flowers that had died and got buried under the snow and other items as well.
Thank you.
Further discussion? Vice Mayor?
Yeah, I'll just say I'm supporting this amendment. That way we can be consistent throughout the year, and we'll just have to accept that we don't pick when we pass, and that our memory, I would like to think anyway, would like to last past 30 days should I be interred in a bitter cold November day. Thank you.
Councilmember Naxton?
Thank you. Just kind of a general question on maintenance on silk flowers, fake flowers that, they're kind of like forever, but they're not, they deteriorate slowly. And I was wondering how the city handles that. You've got silk flowers that have been sitting there for 2 years and they're faded and falling over. I mean, does the city at what time do you pick them up? What time do you clean them up, or do you?
Mr. Walker or
Thank you, Mayor. Thank you, council member. So far in my time here, all that we have done is that initial big spring cleanup. And so when we had the dead flowers, the silk flowers that are obviously past their time, those have been cleaned up. Currently, we have not taken any flowers off of any graves or anything at the moment. It's been that initial, and the cleanup, I should also, was for the first 3 days before Memorial Monday. So it just happened not that long ago.
Councilmember Nexon.
Cleanup happens then, and I think you mentioned earlier, if I could direct you, that if we're cleaning up for whatever reason, fences or whatever, that a notice goes out, and I was just wondering if that might be something that ought to be in our, and maybe it is in there, in the code, that when this is a new cemetery, and that people know when they sign the contract, they get that plot that, you know, on May 1st, the city's going to come through and do a cleaning and picking them up. So it's kind of noticed there, so you're not having to notice people that may not exist at some point 50 years down. And so perhaps the question back to the clerk is that in there somewhere that we're going to be cleaning it May 1st and we'll be picking up flowers and things and debris?
Thank you, Councilmember Nexted. Through the mayor, yes, it is. So the new policy clearly states that we will notice 20 days before the cleanup in May. The signs will be posted in the cemetery, and then we do a final cleanup in the cemetery in late September. And it goes on to say that any decorations that are looking or are otherwise removed by the deadline regulations set forth that have become withered, discolored, will be removed by the Parks and Rec staff. So we have 2 scheduled annual cleanings that are posted 20 days ahead of time in the cemetery, where everything that is in bad shape is picked up.
I'm sorry, just for clarification on the, your memorandum on the recommendations for the requested amendments, it says staff supports allowing plastic or silk flowers and artificial decorations year-round.
That is correct.
Thank you. Further discussion? Seeing none, clerk, please call the roll.
Vice Mayor Glendenning,
Yes?
Councilmember Sonart,
Yes.
Councilmember Petty,
No.
Councilmember Winger,
Yes.
Councilmember Nexted,
Yes?
Mayor Gabriel,
Yes.
Councilmember Baisden.
Yes.
You have 6 yes votes and 1 no vote.
Any further discussion? Councilmember Winger?
Yes, on page 85 in our packet, I see a amendment from staff that I would like to.
Yep. Go ahead, please.
Okay, I'd like to make a motion to amend the Kenai Municipal Cemetery Regulations as attached to Ordinance 3293-2022 in reference for adoption of Section 4 of the ordinance to include headstone material requirements within the marker and headstone section. Markers shall be constructed of materials that will not decay, rot, or decompose. Examples are hard stone, concrete, or hard metals.
Second, request unanimous consent.
Thank you. Unanimous consent was requested. Is there any objection? Seeing none, that amendment is approved. Further discussion? Councilmember Baisden.
Thank you, Mayor. I have an amendment I want to make to Section 3 on page 71. I noticed dealing with the fee schedule that we have in place. We have a standard plot of $1,000 and we have a veteran plot of $750, but we do not mention the veterans under columbarium. And I think under columbarium niche, we have $1,000, and I would propose that we add veteran columbary niche at $750 to recognize their sacrifice.
I'll second.
Very good discussion.
Request unanimous consent.
Unanimous consent was requested. Is there any objection? Seeing none, that amendment is approved. Further discussion?
Request unanimous consent.
Thank you. So on the main motion, resolution number 22-51. Oh, I'm sorry. We have to vote on this because it's an ordinance, but.
Yes,
but-
please.
Yeah, so on ordinance number 3293-2022 as amended is where we're at now. Is there any other discussion? Seeing none, clerk, please call the roll.
Councilmember Petty,
Yes.
Councilmember Winger,
Yes.
Councilmember Nexted,
Yes?
Mayor Gabriel,
Yes.
Vice Mayor Glendenning,
Yes?
Councilmember Baisden,
Yes.
Councilmember Sonart.
Yes.
You have 7 yes votes. Ordinance 329322 is enacted.
Thank you. And next we have, which is a companion to the ordinance 3293 that we just worked through, is resolution number 2022-37, removing the moratorium on the purchase of standard cemetery plots for the sole purpose of reserving a cemetery plot not being used for immediate interment. And there's a clerk's note at the meeting of June 1st, 2022. This resolution was postponed to this meeting. A motion to adopt is on the floor. Councilmember Nexted.
Request unanimous consent.
Thank you. Unanimous consent was requested. Is there any objection to unanimous consent on resolution number 2022-37? Seeing none, that resolution is adopted. Next up, we have item G14, action approval recommending the City of Kenai representative for appointment to the Kenai Peninsula Borough Planning Commission. Pleasure, Council. Councilmember Vice Mayor Glendinning.
Yes, thank you, Mayor Gabriel. Yes, I recommend that we confirm the nomination of the mayor's candidate for the Borough Planning Commission of Diane Fikes. Thank you.
I'd second that and request unanimous consent.
Thank you. Unanimous consent was requested. Is there any objection? Seeing none, Ms. Fikes is confirmed to the Kenai Peninsula Borough Planning Commission. That brings us to committee commission reports, and if there's no objection from council, our attorney, Mr. Bloom. Oh, you did? Okay, sorry. Committee commission reports. Council on Aging.
Thank you, Mayor. Council on Aging met on June 9th, and they had two main discussion items. One was, they had the library resources for seniors presentation from Elizabeth Clowino. She's been at the library for quite a long time. She did a great presentation. She provided the mission statement and facts about the library. It was quite in-depth, actually, in all the items and things that the library does provide for the seniors and how they can get books and, all that. But anyway, excellent presentation by Elizabeth. If you see her at the library, tell her so. The second action item or discussion item was the greenhouse that they had donated some time ago. It's up and running, and it's going to be dedicated in July. And they're going to have a dedication there on July 12th at 2 o'clock. And you might want to be there if you're available. The director also gave a report, and if you go by the senior center over there, you'll find that, and I think it's still there, there's a refrigerated truck, big truck that's running and humming away, and that is there. It belongs to Doyle Fuel Services. They're donating it for the time being and all of the fuel. So as it's running, it's not costing the city, the seniors, anything, and they're putting a lot of their frozen foods, things that they've gotten, fish and whatnot out there temporarily until they can bring it in. But anyway, thank you to Doyle Fuel Service for doing that. And my understanding at their next meeting, Paul will probably want to be a guest there talking about the bluff erosion project. And their next meeting will be July 14th.
Thank you. Airport Commission.
Thank you, Mayor. The Airport Commission tried to meet tonight on June 9th, did not have enough commissioners, so there was no business held that day. The next commission will be on July 14th.
Thank you. Harbor Commission.
Yes, thank you, Mayor. The Harbor Commission met on June the 6th, and there was a special presentation about Clean Harbor Survey by Tab Amu, and he has a website, and the Harbor Commission was encouraged to visit that. Also, there was discussion about the boat ramp dredging, and Mr. Curtin let us know that that permit from the Army Corps has been renewed for the next 3 years with a 1-year extension. Also, there was cathodic protection installed, and the boat ramp was dredged. They also discussed personal use fishery, which is coming up really quickly. There's a RFP out for the garbage. The toilets will be going out this week. Parks and Rec will be managing the day-to-day operation, while Public Works will manage the setup and take down. Also, Mr. Curtin reported that the bluff erosion project stabilization report design is 65% designed, and we should be getting up to 95% later on in the summer. Our next meeting is August the 8th, and I'll be there. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Parks and Recreation Commission?
Thank you, Mayor Gabriel. Parks and Rec met on June 2nd for a work session. They only had 3 members in attendance for this work session, and they just discussed their capital project priorities. And their number 1 priority right now are the baseball dugouts. The next one that they spent quite a bit of time talking about is the snack shack there at the ball fields. We had put in the past some work into that shack, some flooring. They've identified needs. Apparently that facility is sitting on the ground and it's not on a foundation, so it's literally rotting, and the floor itself is spongy. So they do have a lot of concerns when it comes to that snack shack, and that will be their next focus on putting it on correct foundation and redoing that. Another concern they had were the Little League restrooms. And the outhouses. They said that they need to do some cleaning. They need to repaint some new fixtures. Some of the stall doors need to be fixed. They also talked about some of their wants. Some of the things that they would like to see would be a field house for soccer, kind of like the Kincaid Parks. They would also like a campground that is a AA, which means it would have water, dump, and electricity, full amenities. They would like to map and expand to connect all the bike paths. They would like to look at the event venue and pavilion at Main Street, and they would like to look at building a pavilion that would be able to hold 200 plus people for events. They also talked about signs and kiosks and maps, putting QR codes on signs, more ski trails and connecting trails. There was some talk about the multi-purpose facility, enclosing it, adding locker rooms. They also talked about maybe using the old multi-purpose facility for soccer or batting cages. They also talked about bringing in kind of redoing Old Town Kenai into more of an arts district. So they would like to do like arts in the street where people can paint murals and stuff on streets, paint fire hydrants that are all within a scope approved plan. And then part of that too would be bringing in what they call as a sticker bus. Somebody suggested doing a sticker boat. And so there would be a boat and wherever you're from. So if you're from Valdez, you'd put your Valdez sticker on there. And those were some of the things that they discussed just to make it fun and inviting for visitors. One of the questions they asked was, what is going on with the bike path project? Brad didn't know anything about that bike path project, so he was not able to answer any of that. And I did let them know I would let Mr. Ostrander know that they would like some sort of report as far as where the bike path project is, maybe kind of an outline of that. And that's all I have to report. Our next meeting will be a ways away on August 4th due to the dip netting season in July.
Thank you. Planning and Zoning Commission?
Thank you, Mayor Gabriel. The Planning and Zoning Commission met in chambers here on June the 8th at 7 p.m. They had, excuse me, a town site historic review for 508 Mission Avenue. And what this is, it's they were approving the moving of the old Miller House. The old Miller House is the first frame house in Kenai, and they're going to move it in an area closer to the Orthodox cemetery. And the hope is that would be one of the foundational structures to draw attention to Kenai, how people lived, not only from pioneer times, but up until the the dawning of the 20th century. They're going to build the house up. Possible use would be a vacation rental, much like another dwelling which is on the bluff down by the Bay Arms. Also approved a special use permit for the Moose Meat John cabin, and the question was, why are we doing this, every year or something? And they asked a question about the possibility of a long-term lease. And I think the short answer is that if there's a long-term lease, there has to be improvements made to it, and this short-term lease allows us to maintain business as usual with the Moose Meat John cabin in its current location. Other comments they had, there was notice that there was a competitive bid for a property on 2nd Street. There was a South Forest, the park there by the Armory. They made a comment that the trees there were infested with beetle kill, and perhaps the city has it on their list, I'm sure they do, to firewise that whole area behind the Armory, between there and down to the bluff overlooking the inlet. A member of the public contributed a letter talking, subject to the matter, it's in our packet, was unethical display of favoritism towards individual who file a rezoning permit, number PZ something. And the question was okay, without getting too far in the weeds, it was recognized that perhaps the city could use a code of ethics. Just how we do it. We're a small town, everybody knows one another, but when you're debating something, maybe just don't run out and greet the individual warmly and all of this. There's a time where it's for business, and then there's a time where we can be congenial with our friends and neighbors. I hate to put up a barrier or a dichotomy between interaction and expression of concern for a certain subject, but we probably should try and act professionally. Just a general statement. They noticed that the Orthodox cemetery, which is down in the area where the Miller cabin is going to be moved, that there's no real legal access to that cemetery, and it was reported that the city is going to help with that concern. The Bishop of Sitka is looking maybe for a driveway easement. There's another route that now parallels a fence line that runs with the cemetery to the north along the Spur Highway. And when all this is said and done, the good people of the Russian Orthodox Church will have legal access to the cemetery, even if it involves something as simple as a driveway easement. Our next meeting is June 22nd here in Chambers at 7 o'clock, and that ends my report. Thank you.
Thank you. Beautification Committee?
Beautification Committee did not have a meeting the last several weeks, but on Saturday, June 4th, they did have a planting day. So all the city planters now around town are planted with flowers. Their next meeting is not for another couple months, and I don't know the exact date.
Thank you. Yeah, and it is looking nicer, for sure. Thank you. Under Mini Grant Steering Committee, we have, the clerk reached out and said we do have an application. I'd have to review it. Look, I just came in recently, so I've done that. Sorry, I haven't done it yet, so we'll go back and review that and see what is the exact ask. Under report of the mayor, it was actually just before our last meeting, Wednesday. I was kind of coming down with a head cold. I've still got it kind of lingering, but due to that, I was unfortunately missed the employee appreciation dinner, and just wanted to say it wasn't. I was planning on going. I RSVP'd and looking forward to it, but I didn't. I don't think anybody would have wanted me there anyway. So just wanted to say I do appreciate our employees and all the work that they do. Since our next meeting is June or July 6th, rather, I just want to say we got the 4th of July parade coming up prior to that, so hopefully that'll be a lot of folks will be able to get over there. It's been really good the last year, especially because it wasn't done the year before. So hopefully we'll have some nice weather and get folks out for that. And then lastly, just wanted to just say good meeting. Appreciate everybody's effort tonight. And with that, we'll go to administration reports. City Manager, Mr. Ostrander.
Thank you, Mayor Gabriel. So a couple things. First of all, hazard tree mitigation, in reference to Vice Mayor's Glendenning's report on the park over there next to the Armory Municipal Park. So I've been actively working with Brad Walker to get hazard trees removed from those parks. So we're going to be contracting with someone to remove those. Many of those are outside of our expertise to be able to remove because there's issues with them, but we are going to be removing those, but we're going to be focusing on just hazard trees. So those trees that if they fall, they could take out some of our infrastructure, or it could be a danger to the folks that are using the park. We're going to get rid of those. As far as firewising those areas, we're going to be waiting until the fall to firewise using the grant monies that we have available. But the focus right now is hazard tree mitigation. We're going to want to get those out of all of our public areas. Wanted to make sure that the council knew that the dog park update is included in the mid-month report for the Public Works Director, so you can look in there. He provides an update on where that's at. Good news here, we hired Larry Pursley. Most of you remember Larry from when we did all of our CARES Act grant programs. We've hired him as our grant writer. Our former grant writer, Riley Shirtliff, resigned to move on to other things. He lives in Cooper Landing, and the commute was really beginning to kill him with $5.60 gas. But Larry's coming on, really excited to have him. He's committed for 6 months, which is going to be a critical time period. You know, the notice of funding opportunities really haven't been rolling out with this Infrastructure Act really at all. But he's going to put a structure in place, so we're going to be very well positioned for when he leaves and the next grant writer takes that up. So, again, really excited for him to come on. As you know, Ryan Foster has resigned from the city. His last day is going to be next Friday. But in other good news, I've asked Max Best to come in and be the interim director while we're recruiting. We're actively recruiting now. It's out on the street, but Max is willing to come in as interim, and that's going to be huge for us. For those that don't know Max, he worked as the planning director at the Kenai Peninsula Borough for 20 years, long time anyways. So he'll be a great addition as we work through this transition. I also wanted to thank the council for approving the PO in excess of $15,000 for the leadership training tonight. This leadership training is something that we've never done at the city, but 20 of our employees, all supervisors, are going to be going through this leadership training. It's going to be structured specifically for us, paid for by each of the departments. It's going to be training that will talk about the culture of the organization, talk about how to have difficult conversations with employees or your peers. Just all these things, all these tools that our leaders within our organization need. So thank you again for approving that. I met with Peter Yvonne, who is the new executive director of the Kenaitze Indian Tribe, last week. We're both very interested in strengthening the relationship between the two organizations, figure out how we can collaborate together. We already have one specific idea as far as them helping support us through the acquisition of firefighting equipment. They have a lot of opportunities for grants that we don't, so it could be a great opportunity. He's very excited. His council's very excited about it. He's going to actually be presenting to this body at your next meeting, just sort of an introduction to him. And I'm going to be attending one of their tribal council meetings in July as well, so I'm looking forward to see where that leads. Employee Appreciation Dinner on the 3rd of June was excellent. Appreciate all of you folks that were able to make it. It was an incredible evening. The weather was just spectacular. Everybody I talked to had just a great time. It seems like every year that party gets a little bit better, and that party planning committee does just a phenomenal job putting that together. On the Bridge Access Pathway project, there actually is an update in the mid-month report as well, but I will give you a little bit more. I met on site with the DNR folks last week, Thursday I think it was, and we walked pretty much the entire route with I think 5 of their design team. And so they are going to be designing now. I'm sure you've seen HDL has been out surveying for the last week. They're going to be designing over the winter and then actually into next summer. They're planning on awarding a construction contract for construction of that in the fall of 23 with probably completion and final completion in 2024. So other good news, I've been working with Randy Ruaro, who is the Chief of Staff for Governor Dunleavy. Actually, Mayor Gabriel and I met him. I met him for the first time. I think Brian had known him before, but I met him for the first time when we visited in March. And we've been working together to try to identify match funds for that congressionally directed spending that we got, the $385,000 we got for mitigation that requires a match, that we didn't realize required a match when we got it. But we've been able to identify state funds through forestry that we're going to be able to get for spruce bark beetle mitigation that will match those funds, so we'll be able to utilize those as well. So that's going to really help us leverage. In the end, combined with the $385 and this forestry money and the $150 we already got, we're going to have close to $1 million to help firewise our community. So good news. And then last, the Bluff project. I do anticipate that Governor Dunleavy will sign the budget around the 20th of this month. And again, talking to Randy Ruaro, his Chief of Staff, seems like we're on pretty solid footing there, and it looks like he probably will sign the budget, and there won't be a veto of any of the $6.5 million that we're able to get in there. And that's all I've got, but I'm happy to answer questions.
Vice Mayor Glendenning.
Yeah, I was going through the mid-month report, and it talked about, as we do every year, dredging the mud from the boat launch down by the harbor. And it talked about a stricture that is applied by the Borough River Center to us. Has that always been there, or is this a new thing?
Mr. Ostrander.
Thank you, Mayor Gabriel, Vice Mayor Glendenning. So I'm not familiar with the River Center restriction. Mr. Curtin would have to answer that question probably. I do know that we get a permit, but I thought it was from the Corps of Engineers, that we get a 5-year permit that we just did renew. If there's some sort of, if the River Center plays in that somehow, I'm not sure what it is, but.
Yeah, because just in the recent history, last winter or two, we've gone through an analysis of our waterfront concerns, and there was a working session, a working agreement with the Borough Assembly, and legislation was approved, and I didn't recall the River Center having their ability to also extend their power into the actually the mud that we own on the bottom of the river. And maybe I'm reading it wrong, but if you could maybe refresh my memory or at some point in time.
Mr. Ostrander.
Yeah, thank you, Mayor Gabriel, Vice Mayor Glendenning. So the anadromous stream ordinance does apply below the bridge. So it does apply from mean high water 50 feet above that in the waters below the bridge all the way to mile 0 of the river. So the River Center does play in those areas. I'm just not sure of how exactly they would play with our dredging activities.
Yeah, it was my understanding that all our activities were revealed, and there was a blanket blessing for what we do. And maybe I'm misunderstanding the comment that was made in the manager's report, director's report. I'm sorry.
Councilor Winger.
Thank you, Mayor Gabriel. Thank you for your report, Mr. Ostrander. I think that's great that we were working towards the match on that grant money, and getting close to $1 million will definitely really help resolve a lot of our firewising and hazard. And I think it's great that you're working with Knightsy and we're building the relationship with them. Did you ever find out what their development was going to be? I heard rumor, but I was just wanting to confirm that rumor on that development.
Mr. Ostrander?
Thank you, Mayor Gabriel. Councilmember Winger, I don't know what it is. You're talking on the right off of South Spruce there, that new development that they're doing in there?
At the trailer park?
Right, yeah.
I was told that that's Knightsi's maintenance shop that was being developed there. So that's why I was kind of hoping that that relationship would have confirmed or denied that that's what's being built there. It looks like a large build. So that's what I've heard. I was just hoping to get some clarification.
Any further questions of the city manager? Seeing none, we'll go to the city attorney, Mr. Bloom.
Thank you, Mayor Gabriel, members of council. I just want to update you on the bowling alley. It changed ownership this week. The new owners committed to getting me a demolition plan with a timeline by the end of this week. I'd like to check with them again before I speak as to what the new development will be, just to double check that before I say publicly, but I'll get that information to you as well at a future meeting.
Any questions of the city attorney? Seeing none, we'll go to city clerk, Ms. Sander.
Thank you. So this might be normal, but this is new for me. We have seen an increased inquiries for mobile vendor and transient merchant permits as of lately. We sent out the vehicle for hire license renewal notifications out early this month. And as Mayor Gabriel noted, there's a little bit difference in our agenda. So our current, sorry, let me flip back to there. Code allows for consent items that are normal and customary and non-controversial to be approved, put on consent and approved with one motion. And then the public is allowed to comment on any of those items after they're read into the record by me. A council member at any time, if thinks that that doesn't belong on consent, can remove any one of those items. But I've seen often with our special use permits, they're at the end of the agenda, and if there is somebody here to comment, we either amend the agenda and bring it up forward so they don't have to wait till the end of the evening. So if I put something on consent and you disagree with it, by all means, when we get there, you can pull it off at the meeting, and it'll be heard at its regular place on the agenda. And I did discuss that change with Mayor Gabriel and Manager Ostrander before just doing it on my own. And then the other thing is I will see you all here next Monday for a couple of hearings.
Board of Adjustment. Was that Monday or Tuesday? Monday.
Monday, 20th.
Any questions of the city clerk? Seeing none, we'll move to additional public comment. Is there anybody from the general public that'd like to address the council at this time on any item? No? Anybody online?
No one online.
Seeing none, we'll move to council comments. Councilmember Petty.
Thank you, Mayor Gabriel. We had some distinguished individuals that were escorted to the airport on June the 3rd. They were our Special Olympic individuals, Mr. Josh Daly and Mr. Daryl Megan. And they represented the Kenai Peninsula in the Special Olympics over at Orlando, Florida. They had special applause as they got on the plane, and they brought home gold and silver. And so I just want to congratulate both of those gentlemen for the outstanding job in representing us over in Orlando. Also, I had the privilege to attend the Employee Appreciation Dinner, and it was very wonderful to get to say thank you to all the wonderful employees here at the city. Also, I wanted to give my best wishes to Ryan Foster and thank him for his service, even though he's not here tonight, and I greatly appreciate that. And I look forward to working with Mr. Best in the interim. I'm very thankful to hear about Larry being our new grant writer, and looking forward to personal use fishery that's just right around the corner. So thank you so very much.
Thank you. Councilmember Sonart.
Thank you, Mayor Gabriel. I enjoyed my first employee appreciation dinner on the 3rd. And Madam Clerk, I responded my RSVP really quickly, and then I read the rest of the email about bringing a donation, and I thought to myself, oh, I know what I'm going to do. And then I never communicated back to you. I apologize. So my husband was furious with me on the way home. He says, next year you owe them 2. So it will be 2 for next year. And then on the 4th, the next day, I stopped by the Kenai Kite Festival, and that was just, it was fun. I mean, what does Kenai have that's really all the time? Wind. So let's take advantage of it and fly some pretty kites. There was some, I guess some professional kiters from Anchorage that came down and brought these really massive ones, very colorful, but it was fun to see them up there and to watch the kids. There was a section of kids that had their own kites. That was interesting. And, but no, it was fun. And then I also wanted to let everybody know that for the first time in 3 years, the Kenai Peninsula Summer Orchestra is back together, finally, after 3 years. And we've started rehearsals, and there will be 2 concerts, one in Homer, one in Kenai, at Kenai Central. I don't know the dates off the top of my head, but it's the last Friday, Saturday in July, which I know right in the middle of the fishery. But that's when summer orchestra happens. So pretty cool. We're playing Bruckner's 4th Symphony and a Beethoven Overture and a Wagner piece. So it's kind of neat to be back together. And then I just want to, even though he's not here, I just want to say best wishes to Ryan Foster. Thank you.
Thank you. Vice Mayor Glendenning.
Thank you, Mayor Gabriel. Yeah, I too wish Mr. Foster all the best wishes and success in his future endeavors. I too went to the employee appreciation dinner and got to have my picture taken in a Corvette. I felt young. I probably didn't look young, but it was fun. And there was an airplane on static display, and I sure enjoyed that. It was a very, very fun event, and well paced, and the food was just excellent. And of course, at the end, the city manager invited me to get up and speak, and then he gave my speech. Thanks. So I blurted something out and sat down. But a good time was had by all. And as far as bringing in stellar folks to help us bridge the gap in our 2 vacancies, that's you picked the finest that was available. I mean, you couldn't shop the world over and you couldn't have found 2 better. So thanks for doing that, and we'll have a good summer, and hopefully we can work through some of these issues that are coming up. Always issues, but I think we're off to a good start, and I appreciated the thorough rendition of our public works, and I'm anxious to see how the rec center evolves. It's inferred that they're looking at things, and let's just take time and spend money till we get it right. Not a lot of money, but enough money to get it right, and I encourage that. And having said that, that's all I have to offer.
Thank you. Councilman Winger.
Thank you, Mayor Gabriel. I too would like to give my best wishes to Mr. Foster on his future endeavors. Again, just reiterating what others have said, I think it's great that Mr. Ostrander has found a temporary director for Mr. Foster so that position doesn't sit vacant through the prime time. So thank you for filling that. Great talks. Unfortunately, I did not make the employee appreciation barbecue. I was camping with my kids. So my husband is gone remotely in McGrath and Bethel, working 18-hour days right now, and we won't see him till November. So I am tasked with doing all of the mom things. So I took my kids camping that day. We have a full summer of soccer, wrestling, and competitive swimming as well. I appreciate Mr. Bloom's patience with me this last week. We tried to correspond and talk, and I said, I'm camping. I just kayaked to Swanson, and now I'm camping, so can I can I get back with you on Monday? And he was very understanding on that. So with that being said, I will be leaving to Hatcher's Pass Wednesday with my children, and there is no reception, so I will be out of reception from Wednesday to Sunday. I do like to let the body know that in case anything comes up. Again, just would like to really encourage people to get out and firewise their property, take out those hazard trees, mitigate any thing that could be burnable within, 100 feet of your home. As Mr. Bazin and I made a point last time, the government, nobody's going to come do that for you. So really taking those precautions on yourself and getting that done. Having that / disposal site, I look forward to hearing how many more additional visits we will see next year. And I would just like to wish everybody a happy, safe 4th of July. I will probably be in Sutton, Grandview, watching the car launching off. My kids want to go watch the cars get launched, so I believe that's what we will be doing for that time frame. So I will not be at the 4th of July stuff, but just would like to wish everybody a happy 4th.
Yeah, I've seen video of that. It's pretty awesome. So, yeah. Councilmember Bazin.
Good night. I'll yield my remaining time to Councilman Naxted.
Councilmember Naxton.
I probably won't use much of it. But I did attend the employee appreciation, and I think that it was the best held event for employee appreciation that I've been to. I didn't have to cook either, or Jim Glendenning. Yeah, but at any rate, the food was excellent. The weather was great. That was a good venue. Very well organized, all the games and things like that. And special thanks to Kenai Aviation. They had their King Air down there that they allowed people to climb in and out of, and also the Corvette from Dr. Zerl, which Bill got pictures in and all that. So that was all great. I'm really, really happy that we got, I don't even know what it's called now, the land management plan is labeled here, but it's not that anymore, completed tonight and moving on, and that's kind of a relief to get that done, and the amount of work that the administration, Mary Toll was an excellent choice to pull that together, somebody I've worked with since like 1980, and she's very thorough and competent, and it really shows in this plan, which really didn't change considerably, from when it was drafted last October, I think. And also, I'll be seeing all of you next Monday for a long evening for adjustment.
Mr. Ostrander?
Thank you, Mayor Gabriel. It's something I failed to mention. The Borough Assembly is hearing an ordinance next Tuesday that would approve the use of rock out of the Seldovia Quarry for the city in support of the Bluff Stabilization Project. I just wanted to let you know that is up for public hearing on Tuesday, the 21st.
Thank you.
Are they looking for any support from us? Anything additional, or is it what's the?
Mr. Ostrander?
Yeah, thank you, Mayor Gabriel. Councilmember Nack said, no, I don't think so. I mean, it seems like it's got good support, and the mayor's been strongly supportive of it, and I don't think there's a need for. I'm going to attend there and testify and thank them for it. But other than that, I think we're fine.
Okay, good.
Thank you. And I'd like to wish Mr. Foster the very best moving forward, and seeing no other business before this body, we are adjourned.
Goodbye.